Chapter 148. The shaman seemed to have known that Xueqi would come up the mountain, so he just sat in the stone house and waited. The guards at the door smiled kindly when they saw Xueqi. The shaman is waiting inside. One of them whispered to Xueqi. Thank you. Xueqi thanked them and walked into the house. Seeing the shaman sitting there, Xueqi felt that the shaman was very tired, not physically, but mentally. It seemed that the shaman had aged a lot in the past year. Xueqi walked to the low stone table and sat down, asking, "Are you okay?" The shaman nodded with a smile. The wrinkles on his face were deeper because of the changes in his face. Looking at Xueqi carefully, the shaman was very pleased. "How was the journey?" "Very good. I learned a lot. I will draw it for you when the time comes. Of course, you have to provide some animal skins and pigments. I don't have them now." Although Xueqi had said that he would draw the experience of this journey in the form of a scroll, there were too many things that he had experienced, so it was impossible to draw everything. There were some things that Xueqi had to mention to the shaman. As for the eagle that led the way, the high mountain range, the ice field at the top of the mountain, the mysterious eagle mountain, and the strange white insects, Xueqi would describe them in detail and draw them on the wu roll. The shaman listened very carefully. Sometimes, he would think about the records passed down by his ancestors. He didn't interrupt and let Xueqi talk. He was afraid that he would miss some details if he interrupted. When Xueqi finally finished, the shaman was still in a daze. It took a while for him to come back to his senses. The Eagle Mountain really exists. The shaman sighed. When he saw the little bird that Xueqi took out, he knew that it would grow into a big bird. Xueqi once asked him if he had ever thought about going outside the tribe to find people from other tribes. In fact, the shamans had thought about this for a long time. This was something that every shaman had thought about, but no one had succeeded. When the shaman saw the eagle, he had an idea. He thought, what if one day, the eagle could grow up smoothly and grow big enough to fly over the surrounding obstacles and go to places further away where the warriors of the tribe could not reach? According to the ancestral records, the giant mountain eagles were a race that did not fear the peak of the mountain. When they see a tall mountain, they will not think of avoiding it, but of conquering it. In every hunting ground, there were mountains that the warriors couldn't climb over, blocking their way forward. When they hunted, they would avoid those places. Even the ancestors who opened up the hunting route back then avoided those mountains. Unless they found another route to pass through that mountain, they would go around it. If they couldn't go around it, they would change their route. The others in the tribe didn't know that the ancestors had encountered many obstacles when they were setting up hunting routes. In the end, they had to give up the original route and change it to the current ones. What stopped the warriors were not the bloodthirsty ferocious beasts, but the mountains, the wide rivers, and the dangerous places. But if there was a giant mountain eagle that could fly directly over the mountains, then all the obstacles would be overcome. If the eagle was lucky enough to survive and grow up smoothly, even if the shaman couldn't see it in his lifetime, he would write his thoughts on the animal skin scroll and pass it on to the next shaman, and the one after that, and even the successor of the shaman hundreds of years later. He hoped that they would be able to see the day when they could truly go out. That was why he gave Cha-Cha better protection than Caesar on the first day he saw him. But now, he didn't expect that Xueqi could take Cha-Cha to the Eagle Mountain and help Cha-Cha complete the first stage of his growth. Everything seemed to be full of hope. A few years ago, he was very excited about opening up a new route. However, after Xueqi mentioned to him about the outside tribes, he felt that compared to going out, whether it was opening up a new route or other things, they were not important. That was why he was so calm when Tar and Gigu were fighting. But he wouldn't tell anyone about this. After all, in the eyes of others, there were many things that were illusory and unreal. As the spiritual leader of the tribe, he couldn't act on impulse when he wasn't absolutely sure. Good. Very good. Xian, next time you come here, bring Cha-Cha with you. The shaman said happily. Yes. Next time I'll bring him with me. He has grown so much that he can't fit in the room. Xueqi said. When he heard that Cha-Cha had grown so big that he couldn't fit in the room, the shaman smiled so widely that his eyes narrowed. He couldn't wait to call Cha-Cha over and praise him. Xueqi looked at the overjoyed shaman and scratched the goosebumps on his arm. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. The shaman was a little emotional now. Should he say that now or find another chance to say it? At his age, he couldn't take it anymore. What? Are there other changes? The shaman's smile faded as he asked. Well, how far do you think the outside tribes are from us? Xian asked. The shaman's smile reappeared, full of expectation. As long as Cha-Cha grows strong enough, he can find other tribes. Believe me, that day will come. Then, the shaman became a little disappointed and sighed. But, maybe I won't be able to see that day. Xian didn't say anything. He only reached into the animal skin bag and took out the stone that the giant eagle had given him. He took it out and placed it on the stone table in front of him. After returning, Xian carefully cleaned the stone again. This time, there was no strange smell. As for the shamaness, when she saw what Xian had placed on the stone table, she sighed and froze. The shaman seemed to be frozen. He maintained his posture and even his expression was frozen. Only his eyes were fixed on the palm-sized flat stone that Xian had placed on the stone table. Guggle. Guggle. The shaman wanted to say something, but he only made some meaningless sounds, as if there was something stuck in his throat. Hey, are you okay? Calm down. Calm down a little. Take a deep breath. Inhale. Xian was frightened when he saw the shaman like this. He waved his hand in front of the shaman's eyes and quickly patted his back. Take a deep breath like this, huff. Xian, who was standing in front of the shaman, was pushed to the side by the shaman. The shaman's whole body was trembling. When he raised his hand and reached for the stone, his hand was shaking so hard that if he was holding a ladle of soup, the soup would be gone. Seeing that the shaman had finally calmed down, Xian sat back down. I didn't finish. This stone was given to me by a very large eagle. It almost vomited all over me. Xian told the shaman what had happened at that time, how he found the pattern on the eagle's foot and how he fed it. The shaman treated the stone as if it was an extremely precious and fragile object. He carefully touched the stone and listened to Xian's story without missing a single word. After Xian finished, the shaman picked up the stone with the pattern on it and carefully looked at the picture on it. The picture looked like a rolling cloud. The shaman searched his memory and said with a trembling voice due to excitement, I remember this picture was in the ancestors' animal skin scroll. Wait, I'll go look through it. Xian only felt a gust of wind blow in front of him and the shaman disappeared. Soon, the shaman returned, took the stone from the stone table, and left again. Looking around, Xian got up and poured himself a cup of water. He slowly drank and waited. Halfway through, when the people outside came in to change the tea for the shaman, they saw Xian sitting there peacefully and their faces twitched. Xian was probably the first person who could drink tea in the shaman's place. Even if they were the two team leaders, they would still be subconsciously restrained here. After about half an hour, the shaman came back like a gust of wind and called Xian. Follow me, we're going to find Xing. Xian knew who the Xing the shaman was talking about. When he came here in the past, he saw Xing a few times. That person was older than the shaman, and it was said that many of his ancestors had been leaders and shaman. His words had more weight in the tribe, and when there were important matters to discuss, he would be called over. However, that old man didn't seem to be easy to talk to. Xian remembered that the old man's gaze was not good. It was like a knife, as if he couldn't wait to cut him a few times. The shaman took Xian out of the stone house and went to another place on the mountain. At this time, there were many people chatting outside. As they were talking, they saw the shaman quickly move his old legs and was past them. They didn't even have time to salute. That's the shaman? A warrior said. It seems so. What happened? Why is the shaman so anxious? Didn't you see who was following behind the shaman? They seem to be heading towards Lei's house. Lei's grandfather is Xing. At this, a few people had an I understand look on their faces. It seemed that the shaman was going to fight for a spot with Xian. In Gigu's hunting team, although he was the team leader, he would often listen to Xing's opinions. If the shaman asked for a spot for Xian, it was unknown if Xing would agree. As for adding another person, that was even more impossible. Back then, when he swore to the fire seed by the fire pit, he said that there would only be 30 people. There wouldn't be one more person, and there wouldn't be one less. At this moment, Xing was sitting in the house with his eyes half closed, deep in thought. Xing's father had once told him earnestly, you have to have a long-term vision. Don't just look at the people around you. Therefore, Xing felt that it was too monotonous for his descendants to be limited to the original hunting route. If they were going to do something, they should do something big. Opening up a new hunting route would be a glory that no one, other than their ancestors, could achieve in hundreds of years. This kind of glory would naturally be shared by his own people. As for the others, he didn't care. Thinking about what Lei had said when he came back, Xing snorted heavily. Why would the shaman treat the people on the mountain badly for a kid from the foot of the mountain? As he was thinking, the shaman had already brought Xueqi over. Because it was the shaman, no one in the family dared to stop him. Although he was older than the shaman and had a higher status in the tribe, he still had to respect the shaman. Xing stood up and bowed to the shaman. As for Xueqi, who was beside the shaman, he pretended not to see him. "Xian, close the door," the shaman said to Xueqi, who was behind him. Xing's room was different from the others, who only used animal skin or grass curtains. Instead, there was a wooden plank. Xueqi pulled the plank horizontally, blocking the view of the people outside the room. Seeing the shaman like this, Xing was also angry. He was about to say something when he saw the shaman carefully place the item in his hand on the table beside him. All of Xing's anger, all of his words, was replaced by another emotion the moment he saw this stone. The muscles on his face were twisted, probably because his emotions were too complicated and he was too agitated. Xueqi felt the goosebumps on his arms increase. Chapter 149. Xueqi knew that tribesmen would be very curious about things from other tribes. However, for someone like Xing, who always had a serious expression on his face, it was hard to believe that he would be so excited. Xing's nostrils flared and his nostrils flared. His breathing became hurried, each breath heavier than the last. His old face was flushed red. This is... Xing carefully picked up the stone and examined it carefully. At his age, whether it was hunting or crafting stone tools, he had more experience than most people in the tribe. Naturally, he could tell that this stone had not been crafted for too long. Perhaps it was only a few years, or at most a dozen years. However, if this stone was not left behind by the ancestors, then where did it come from? Thinking of how the shamaness rushed over, if it was just for a kid from the foot of the mountain, it really shouldn't be. Then, the shamaness' main purpose was naturally this stone. Thinking of this, Xing no longer cared about the 30 spots, the opening of a new route, or the competition between the two sides. The only thing he wanted to know now was the origin of this stone. The shamaness sat there, not as anxious as before. Although her breathing was still a little unstable, and the hand holding the walking stick was still trembling, her face had already returned to her usual calm and profound self. "This is the reason why I came," the shamaness said. Just as Xing subconsciously leaned towards the shamaness, pricking up his ears to listen carefully, the shamaness said slowly with a slightly trembling voice, "Xian, tell Lao Xing, how did you get this stone?" Xing was stunned, his eyes widening as he looked at Xueqi. The shamaness' words had stunned him. What? This stone was obtained by Xian. Where did he get it from? No, this kid had disappeared for almost a year. You, hurry up and tell me. In front of Xueqi, Xing's tone was not as pleasant. He couldn't control his impatience and his usual style of speaking made it sound like he was interrogating someone. His eyes were like two sharp knives, itching to stab you in the face. However, Xueqi did not mind Xing's tone. With the shamaness here, Xing could not do anything to him. "It's like this," Xueqi briefly explained the origins of the stone. Seeing how anxious Xing was, he skipped a lot of details and only emphasized how he obtained the stone. "Hui. It's the Hui tribe." Xing's eyes were bloodshot as he looked at the shaman and said, "You came here to confirm it, right?" The shaman nodded. "So, I hope you can take that thing out and let me have a look." Taking in a deep breath, Xing carefully placed the stone in his hand back, as though he was dealing with a fragile object. Every single movement he made was done with extreme caution. He controlled his strength, fearing that he might accidentally break a corner of the stone. If the members of the Xing clan were to know that the usually resolute and domineering Xing had such a gentle attitude, their jaws would probably drop in shock. Xing's room was about 20 square meters. Aside from a stone table, a few wooden chairs, and a bed, there was also an especially large stone vat with boxes of various sizes inside. Half kneeling on the ground, Xing opened the stone vat and reached out with both hands to take out a stone box. Just like before, he was also very careful. Every single movement seemed to have been carefully thought out. Xueqi also noticed that when Xing looked at the stone box, his eyes were filled with reverence. His emotions were very passionate. His originally sharp gaze was now focused on the stone box, as though everything around him was nothing. Carefully placing the stone box on the table, Xing opened it. Xiao stretched his neck to take a look. Inside, there was another box. Between the big and small boxes, there were some wood shavings. Obviously, they were there to act as a buffer. Xing took out the small box and carefully wiped away the wood shavings on the outside. His gentleness was completely different from the way he usually beat someone up. He opened the lid. Inside, there were also some wood shavings. In the middle, there was something wrapped in thick beast skin. Xiao had hunted for so long, so he could naturally tell the quality of this beast skin. It was the beast skin of a high-grade beast. Generally, the beast skin of a high-grade beast was very hard, but there were also soft parts. It was just that it was relatively rare. High-quality stone, special wood shavings, and this rare beast skin were all used to protect the thing inside. This made Xiao even more curious as he stared at Xing's actions. Xing carefully and attentively carried the item out of the bag. He opened the animal skin and the item inside was immediately presented to Xiao's eyes. Xiao stared at the table. The thing that Xing and the shaman were eagerly looking at like an extremely precious treasure. He blinked again, and looked over again. Xiao didn't know what kind of expression he should show to express his current feelings. He only felt a group of forest raccos running over and over again in his heart. Before this, based on the shaman and Xing's attitudes, and based on what they said, he deduced that Xing might have something from an external tribe, and that it was extremely precious. Hence, Xiao thought that it was probably a rare treasure. For example, the ice blocks he saw in the mountains near Eagle Mountain, or the skin and silk of white worms, or fire crystals. Or even something more rugged, like a part of a high-grade beast, which the tribesmen loved to treasure. But he didn't expect to see something so unexpected. The thing that Xing was carefully treating was a clay pot, and it was a colored pottery. There were some drawings on the pot, and the style was similar to the drawings on the stone he brought back. Every stroke was curled like a whirlpool. Seeing Xiao staring blankly at the pot on the table, Xing couldn't help but smile. "You've never seen it before, right?" Xing smiled proudly. Xiao dumbfounded. Xing continued to smile proudly. "Xiao, this is a treasure passed down from my ancestors. It comes from an external tribe, and it's not made of stone." Xing felt that Xiao, this kid from the foot of the mountain, was ignorant. He probably didn't know how precious this pot was, because until now, the tribe had never successfully made a single piece of pottery. Even if they had the animal skin scroll passed down from their ancestors, they had never succeeded. Later on, the items left behind from thousands of years ago naturally became priceless treasures of the tribe. They carried too many unspeakable secrets of the tribe, and the families who kept these pots naturally developed a sense of superiority. Although these pots were very fragile, and although they didn't bring much strength to the totemic warriors, even if others took out the most powerful beast, they wouldn't trade it away. Like that family, they also have a treasure passed down from their ancestors. It's also a pot, but it's a pity that their pot doesn't have any drawings on it. It's very ugly, and when it's placed next to mine, it's like the difference between a weak herbivore and a fierce carnivore. Xing continued. In the hearts of the tribesmen, those weak and herbivorous animals were all cowards, and they looked down on them. However, those ferocious and bloodthirsty carnivorous beasts were different. They were the strong, the true strong of the forest. They would always look up to the strong. Xiao. This old man was so proud that his tail was wagging. No matter how serious he was, he couldn't hide the smug smile on his old face, making people want to punch him. No wonder when he listened to the gossip of the tribe's upper echelons, he always heard Xing arguing with the other old men. Other than the way they did things, it was probably because of this pot. This was a sense of superiority. Xiao opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. This was probably the difference between non-indigenous people and indigenous people. Xiao observed the pot. The drawings on the pot had a natural element to them. Those simple lines were like clouds and wind. Other than that, there was also a human face, but every stroke was drawn with swirling lines, giving it a sense of exaggeration. The painter consciously changed the patterns of the human face. The colors of the lines were red, brown, and decorated the pot in a painting style. To the tribesmen, this wasn't just a form of beauty. More importantly, these drawings also contained the totem images of the tribe's witchcraft rituals, giving people a sense of wonder. This was also the symbol of the tribe. Looking at the drawings with this style, one would know which tribe it was produced by. Just now, Xing had said that this was produced by the Hui tribe. Then, back then, did the ancestors of the tribe have any relations with the Hui tribe? The shamaness looked at Xing, who was talking non-stop, and shook her head with a bitter smile. Whenever they talked about the pot, Xing would always be like this, completely different from his usual self. After talking for a while, seeing that the other two didn't respond, Xing thought of the stone Xiao Xian took out and shut his mouth. Then, thinking of the patterns on the stone, Xing carefully picked up the pot and let Xiao Xian and the shamaness see the patterns on the bottom of the pot. It was exactly the same as the pattern on the stone. This should be the Hui tribe, Xing said. In the past, he had always thought that the other tribes that the ancestors talked about were too far away from the tribe, so far that it would be hard to meet one even in thousands of years. Other than the old objects left behind by the ancestors, there were no other new things from the other tribes. He didn't expect to see one today. Didn't this mean that in his lifetime, he would be able to see things from other tribes like the Hui tribe, or people? Thinking about it, Xing couldn't help but feel excited. He looked at the shamaness fervently, wanting to get a definite answer from her. At least he had some hope. The shamaness was the wisest person in the tribe. If there was anyone who could solve this big problem, other than the shamaness, Xing couldn't think of anyone else. I have an idea. The shamaness told Xing about her idea of flying out of the tribe through the cha-cha. Listening to the shamaness seriously, Xing couldn't help but nod. That's right. There are indeed many obstacles in the forest. If we could fly over, that would be great. Xiao Xian listened to the discussion between the shamaness and Xing and interrupted. Actually, we can try to fly over from that big river. The two who were thinking about how to fly over the mountains and swamps looked at Xiao Xian at the same time. Chapter 150. Xiao Xian scratched his head as the two stared at him. Actually, I've been paying attention to that river for a long time. You want Cha-Cha to fly across? The shaman shook his head. That river should be very wide. Cha-Cha wouldn't have a place to rest along the way. Moreover, there are river beasts in the river. Even after 2 more stages of growth, Cha-Cha might not be able to fly across. Flying without food or water, the chances of success were too low. Xing also gave Xiao Xian a look that said, young people are indeed simple-minded. No, it's not just Cha-Cha's flight. I want to build a boat. A simple canoe will do. There are many giant trees in the forest. It won't be difficult, Xiao Xian said. Boat? I've seen this term in the animal skin scroll left behind by my ancestors. I also know about rafts. However, Xian, the trees in the river will sink very quickly. There are wood-eating river beasts in the river. The shaman frowned. Although he rarely went to the river, he had heard many things about it. If they were to build a boat, it would disappear not long after it entered the river. Most of the time that's the case. However, during the rainy season, those wood-eating worms will leave for a period of time like the river beasts. They will only return when the 2 moons overlap. What? Is what you said true? Not only the shaman, even Xing, who thought Xiao Xian was dreaming, couldn't help but stand up and ask. If what Xiao Xian said was true, they could really give it a try. Xiao Xian told them about his discoveries in the past few years. Of course, everything was just a guess. However, Xiao Xian knew that as long as there was a glimmer of hope, the shaman would give it a try. After Xiao Xian finished, the shaman and Xing fell silent. Each of them pondered and analyzed the feasibility of Xiao Xian's idea. After a while, Xing spoke first. If that's the case, we can give it a try. If Xian can't do it, this old man can go personally. The shaman raised his eyelids and looked at Xing. Do you think Cha-Cha will listen to you? Xing was speechless. Although he hadn't come into contact with the eagle, he had heard from his grandson and others that the eagle's temper wasn't very good. Other than Xian, it wouldn't listen to anyone else. Even without it, I can still use that ship. Xing spoke, but he wasn't confident enough. He also knew that his words weren't true and the feasibility of it was too low. It was a method that would only cause them to lose their lives for nothing. How about this, Xian? Wait until next year's rainy season. You can take a look. After waiting for so many years, a few more years won't hurt. You have to make more preparations. As for this matter, don't tell anyone for the time being, the shaman said. The last sentence was said while looking at Xing. I know. Xing looked at the engraved pot on the table and then at the stone beside it. He added, if there's anything you need me to do, just let me know. Although Xing still didn't look at Xiao Xian in a good light, the fact that he could express his opinion on this matter meant that Xing and the shaman had the same thoughts. Getting out of this place was the most important thing. As for opening up a new hunting route, that was secondary. This was an obsession that had been passed down from their ancestors. Since the matter had been explained, the shaman took back the stone and left with Xiao Xian. When the shaman took back the stone, Xing's eyes were glued to it. If the one holding the stone was Xiao Xian, Xing would probably snatch it right away. What a strange thought. Xiao Xian followed behind the shaman, thinking about Xing's reaction. But then he changed his mind and laughed. Perhaps to the people in the tribe, his own thoughts were the strangest. After the shaman left with Xiao Xian, Xing looked at the engraved pot and gently caressed it. He cried and laughed at the same time. His old face was filled with tears. After a while, when Xing's emotions had calmed down, he carefully kept the pot and opened the window. He was lost in thought as he looked out of the window. Outside the window, it was pitch black. Winter was coming. The darkest time of the year was coming. However, he didn't feel as depressed as before. He always felt that there was an intense emotion that was about to break through and explode out. The fire in the house burned, and the wood crackled. Xing sat back on the wooden chair, recalling what Xiao Xian said over and over again. Feeling that it wasn't enough, he took out a piece of animal skin and recorded everything he remembered. Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the wooden door of Xing's room. After the shaman and Xiao Xian left, Xing closed the door again. Everyone in the family knew that once the door was closed, it meant that the old man didn't want to be disturbed. If there was something, they had to knock on the wooden plank to get permission to enter. If they entered without permission, the old man would go crazy. The consequences of the old man's anger were very serious. No one wanted to provoke Xing. Just like when the shaman went in and closed the door, everyone in the family left the house on their own accord. They didn't want to eavesdrop. They only came back after the shaman and Xiao Xian left. Grandfather? Lei was standing outside the door. Come in, Xing said. Lei moved the wooden plank and walked in. Just as he was about to say something, he noticed that Xing was acting strangely. However, he didn't dare to ask. After thinking for a while, he asked the question that he wanted to ask. Grandfather, did the shaman want to let Xian join the 30 people? Xing didn't answer. Lei didn't know what his grandfather meant. After waiting for a while, he looked over and saw that his grandfather was in a daze, staring at the fire. He didn't know what his grandfather was thinking about. This was too unbelievable. His grandfather was actually in a daze. Why don't I ask again? When he thought of fighting for a spot, Xing took out a piece of fire crystal that he had been keeping for a long time. He wanted Lei to improve a little and join the team that opened up the new route. This meant that the old man's thoughts were leaning towards his side. Lei thought. Gathering his courage, Lei asked again. Grandfather, does the shaman want Xian to join the team that opened up the new route? This time, Xing had a reaction. Let Xian join the team that opened up the new route? Definitely not. Xing suddenly became agitated. That's right. If you want to give it to someone, you should give it to someone on our side. Lei agreed. However, before Lei could finish his disdainful words about Xiao Xian, he heard his grandfather say, opening up the new route is too dangerous. If Xian goes in, he might be injured or killed by a fearsome beast. What should we do then? Definitely not. He can't be injured, and he can't die. Lei. Grandfather, the grandson that you personally recommended to join the hunting team that opened up the new route is still standing in front of you. Xing didn't see the struggle on Lei's face. Even if he did, he wouldn't care. What he was thinking now was what to do. After the conversation just now, he didn't want Xian to go out with the hunting team. Not to mention opening up a new route that was even more dangerous. Don't let Xian join the hunting team? However, if he didn't have enough training, when he left in the future, he would have to face more unknown factors and more severe challenges. When that time comes, if he didn't have enough ability to protect himself, how could he succeed? However, if he was eaten by a fearsome beast before he could even take action. Hiss, what a headache. This was the first time Xing felt so conflicted. He was in a dilemma. Lei looked at his grandfather pulling at his beard with a bitter face. He didn't even realize that he had pulled out a few strands. After thinking for a while, Lei asked tentatively, then why did the shaman bring Xian here? Xing had already come back to his senses. Hearing Lei's question, he didn't explain. Instead, like his father and grandfather, he said earnestly, "I told you before, you need to have a long-term vision." Lei lowered his eyelids and thought to himself, "You always mean different things when you say long-term vision." In the end, Lei still couldn't get an answer from Xing. Instead, he was chased out by Xing with a glare. In the dark night, the night swallow at the foot of the mountain flew in the air. In the middle of the night, everything quieted down. The temperature dropped sharply. The wind carried snow and ice, wreaking havoc on the land. This was an unusual winter. In this winter, the shaman didn't take care of other things. He handed it over to the other assistants and asked Gue Zhe to start training. Every time Xiao Xian went up the mountain to look for the shaman, Xing would brave the wind and snow to run over. He wanted to hear more about the progress of the plan. At first, it was only the shaman and Xing. Later, the shaman told Chief Ao. As the chief, Ao had the right to know about this plan. Later, the few elders in the tribe who had some authority heard about this news. Hence, the moment Xiao Xian went up the mountain, the elders and the chief all ran to the shaman. However, they didn't want to tell the two team leaders about this because the two team leaders had to focus on opening up a new route. It wouldn't be good if they were distracted. Because of this, the two team leaders were very depressed. They always felt that they were outside the core of the tribe. No matter which camp these elders belonged to, no matter what they thought of Xiao Xian, after knowing about the plan of the shaman and Xiao Xian, they all made the same decision. For the sake of the shaman and Xiao Xian's plan, they would do their best to help. No. They didn't have much time left. Compared to the young men who had more time, they hoped that before they died, they would know whether this plan was successful or not. That was enough. As for walking out of this place, it was an extravagant hope for them. Humans shouldn't be too greedy. Just like the ferocious beasts in the forest, sometimes they didn't know how to be content. Instead, they would lose their lives in vain. However, some people always had this extravagant hope. They thought that perhaps one day, they would be able to walk to the place in the stories told by their ancestors and see other humans besides their own tribe members. When winter ended and the earth warmed up, the tribe became lively again. When they were preparing for the sacrificial ceremony, Xiao Xian was chosen to dance again. This made many people unhappy, especially the young warriors. In the past, when Xiao Xian found the fire crystals and was chosen, they didn't have any objections. However, Xiao Xian hadn't been in the tribe for the past year. What merit did he have? However, they found that no matter how dissatisfied they were, even if they complained to the elders who were in the opposite camp, they only got one sentence. He deserves it. The two team leaders also had a headache. Recently, there were always people coming to them to talk about Xiao Xian, but they really didn't know. When they went to the shaman, the chief, or the other elders, they only got one sentence. Don't think about other things. Continue to open up new routes. Chapter 151. The tribe looked the same as before, but upon closer inspection, it wasn't hard to notice that many changes were happening quietly. Then, when everyone gathered together to discuss, they realized that there were so many situations that were different from the past. For example, there were always a few old figures walking back and forth by the river in front of the tribe. Not only them, but even the chief often wandered by the river, which made the people living in the mountain foot area very curious. Even if they were not catching fish, they would go to the river from time to time. Gradually, they formed a habit of going to the river when they had nothing to do. Maybe they could meet a senior leader of the tribe and talk about life. And the people in the mountain also found that those bad-tempered old men were very nice to Xiao Xian. They couldn't believe it. Later, even the two team leaders looked at Xiao Xian with strange eyes. There was another thing that puzzled everyone. During the rainy season, several important people on the mountain actually braved the rain and ran to the river every day. This was something that had never happened before. The words passed down from generation to generation made the warriors in the tribe afraid of the river. In recent years, the situation became a little better after fishing, but it was not enough to make those important people in the mountain come to see it, right? Those who were confused continued to be confused, and those who were looking forward to it continued to look forward to it. It was another rainy season. In this year, Xiao Xian's body was 16 years old. After the ceremony, several important people in the mountain began to lose sleep every day. They were nervous and excited, and gathered together to discuss whether the plan needed to be changed. Looking for wood, building boats, making sails, and so on. A series of movements could not be hidden from too many people. During this year's ceremony, the shaman told them about Xien's sailing. This news made the whole tribe talk about it for a long time, and it did not stop until the rainy season. Xian was often stopped by people, asking all kinds of questions about the trip. Everyone in the tribe had a strong sense of expectation. Although they did not understand a lot of what the shaman said, it did not mean that they were not looking forward to it. During the rainy season, torrential rain descended. The river overlords roared as they headed downstream in groups. Those wood-eating bugs also gradually left. Most of the creatures in the river followed the giant beasts downstream. When the two moons met again, they would return from the sea. There were also some that, like the frogs, appeared for a period of time, then went to other places that no one knew of and disappeared. This time, Xian planned to use the time between the end of the rainy season and the reunion of the two moons to sail the boat. At the end of the rainy season, everyone in the tribe, from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain, from the elderly to the children, put down other things at hand and gathered beside the path of glory. Move it out. The shaman stood at the top of the mountain and said, "Ao," and the two team leaders, as well as a few able-bodied warriors, carefully moved the canoe out of the wooden shed. The canoe was nearly 3 meters wide at its widest point and 10 meters long. It was shaped like a shuttle. The reason why it was so big was to make it easier for Cha-Cha to rest inside. If it was only Xian, there would be no need for such a big canoe. Xian had to choose the type of tree that was used to make the canoe. The hunting team had gone out to find all kinds of samples, and brought them back for Xian to choose. After Xian had made his choice, Ao and the others went to cut down the best tree and brought it back. The canoe was made by Xian and several of the tribe's top stoneware craftsmen, including Old Ku. They hollowed out the middle of the tree they had cut down, and made a large and nimble canoe. The canoe was relatively simple to make, and there was no risk of it falling apart. The blueprint was also drawn by Xian himself. When he was drawing, he also consulted the other old warriors in the tribe. Maybe they didn't know anything about canoes, but they knew some useful techniques. Xian then made some changes based on their suggestions. After the blueprint was finished, the stoneware craftsmen went to cut down a lot of wood to practice at home. After all, there was a big difference between wood and stoneware, so they didn't dare to do anything rashly. When they were confident and got the hang of it, they would come back to finish the canoe together. This canoe wasn't that heavy for many totem warriors in the tribe. Normally they could even carry stones, so how hard would it be for them to carry wood? But at this moment, it was carried by several senior totem warriors, and they would carry it down the mountain later. This was a kind of respect, a kind of solemn etiquette. Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. The shaman was drawing patterns on his face, just like the warriors who went out to hunt. It was a kind of blessing, which meant that the tribe attached great importance to this. Even Cha-Cha's feet were drawn by the shaman with the tribe's totem, imitating the giant eagle at Eagle Mountain. After finishing the drawing, Xian bowed towards the fire pit, and then walked to the canoe. Together with the others carrying the canoe, they walked down the path of glory. Cha-Cha directly flew up into the air and flew over. Behind the canoe, the shaman and the other elders of the tribe followed. Some of them were excited, some were worried, and some looked calm, but the twitching of their muscles showed that they weren't. At this time, many people were easily overthinking, worrying about their gains and losses. This was related to the ancestors' wishes, so how could they be calm? Beside the path of glory, the crowd followed the canoe. Adults with children, disabled people with crutches, or supported by others, followed closely. Everyone sang the hunting song and the prayer song. At first, only the people on the mountain sang, but soon, the people at the foot of the mountain sang as well. The whole tribe sang the same song with the same rhythm and pace. Some were young, some were old, some were sharp and some were rough. To them, singing represented everything they were feeling at the moment. Most of the people in the tribe weren't good at expressing their emotions and thoughts. Singing was a form of expression. This was the first time they sang the hunting song, without the impatient killing intent before the hunt. Instead, they sang with fearlessness, without fear, and with hope. On this day, the whole tribe collectively sent Xian off. What was on the other side of the river? They didn't know, and they never thought of finding out. In many people's eyes, Xian's actions were worthy of respect, but they didn't think that Xian could safely cross the river. This river was too dangerous. What a brave warrior! After the canoe was transported down the mountain, Ao and the others carefully pushed it into the river. The canoe that was made was classified as a side canoe. The so-called side canoe was a canoe that was attached to one side or both sides of the canoe, and was shaped like a boat that was floating in the same direction as the canoe. Xueqi's design was a side canoe. Because of this, he once played with it when he was traveling abroad. The side canoe overcame the instability of the canoe that was prone to sway sideways and capsizing in the wind and waves. It also possessed the advantages of the canoe's lightness and structural integrity. It was also a tool used by the Aboriginals for ocean voyaging. The sail was also the most important part of the boat. Now, it was set up with a sail made of leaves and vines. The vines were thin but very strong vines found in the hunting grounds. The best women in the tribe weaved them into an inverted triangular sail. In the eyes of the shamaness and the others, they didn't know if this kind of material would be useful, so it was best to prepare more. But because the vines were hard to find, in the end, they only managed to weave 2 pieces. One piece was installed, and the other piece was used as a backup. They didn't know if a backup piece would be enough. When Xueqi was learning from the Aborigines, he learned that the side canoe could travel more than 200 kilometers a day. But here, Xueqi wasn't so sure. After connecting the side canoe with the side canoe, Xueqi checked every place and the things he needed to bring. Xueqi stood in the canoe and looked at the densely packed people on the shore. Caesar carried old Ku and also stood on the shore. He looked at Xueqi and Cha-Cha who landed in the canoe. He also wanted to follow, but Xueqi couldn't bring him along. If there was any danger on the river, Xueqi could let Cha-Cha carry him. But Caesar couldn't, and Cha-Cha couldn't carry him. If Cha-Cha was about the same size as the giant eagles in Eagle Mountain, he could carry many people. Unfortunately, Cha-Cha was still small. Goodbye. I'm leaving. Xueqi bowed to the people on the shore. Under the leadership of the shamaness and the chief, the people on the shore also bowed to Xueqi. This was a situation that had never happened in thousands of years. To the people of the tribe, Xueqi was their hope to leave this place. If Xueqi didn't succeed, then no one knew how long it would take for them to leave this place. Maybe even after 1,000 years, they would still be stuck in the same place. With a pull of the sail, the canoe sailed away with the wind. The sail was very big. If it weren't for the totemic warrior's great strength, Xueqi might not be able to operate it. Cha-Cha, the big guy, stood in the canoe and looked around curiously. To him, this was a very novel experience. He could actually stand on the river. However, such a big boat was still too small for Cha-Cha. After standing for a while, he flew up to the sky and flew in the direction Xueqi pointed. He still had more freedom in the sky. When he was tired of flying, he would return to the boat to rest. On the shore, the prayer song sounded. It was a collective chorus. Xueqi looked back and saw that the people on the shore were getting smaller and smaller. The house on the mountain gradually became a blurry dot. The mountain that he had lived in for nearly 8 years was gradually disappearing at the point where the water met the sky, just like the riverbank. Besides the sound of the wind, there was no other sound. Looking at the direction of the sun in the sky and feeling the slight change in the wind, Xueqi adjusted the sail and looked ahead. Chapter 152. Sailing on the river was very boring, but they had to be vigilant at all times to prevent anything from jumping out of the water. They also had to pay attention to the direction of the wind, so they didn't have to go back after traveling for half a day. From the end of the rainy season, the day they set off, until the 2 moons coincided, Xueqi calculated that there was less than 30 days of safe time. Xueqi didn't know how wide the river was, so he could only try his best to go forward. If he still couldn't see the situation on the other side of the river after 15 days, then he could only turn back. Otherwise, the river level would drop rapidly and eventually fall into a bottomless abyss. At that time, even if he wanted to fly, he wouldn't be able to. The piranhas in the river were very active. Without the suppression of other giant beasts, from time to time, some energetic fish would jump out of the water and bite each other. At first, there were only some small piranhas near the tribal river, but as they sailed, Xueqi saw many larger piranhas jump out of the water. A piranha nearly 4 meters long suddenly jumped out of the water, jumping high from one side of the canoe to the other. As it jumped, it opened its mouth wide. Before, when there were piranhas that jumped out, Xueqi only avoided them and didn't attack. But now, the target of this one was obviously Xueqi. He controlled the sail with one hand, making it avoid the big fish's path. At the same time, the tip of his foot picked up a wooden stick next to him. After catching it with his free hand, he directly hit the fish's body. The friction between the stick and the air made a whooshing sound. He didn't use a spear, but a hard wooden stick. He hit the fish hard, but he couldn't immediately make it bleed. If blood splashed, the surrounding piranhas would be attracted. At that time, Xueqi's hands wouldn't be able to handle it. Pa! A few fish scales were whipped out, and the piranha that was hit by the stick fell back into the water. Before it could find a target for revenge, it was surrounded by other piranhas. On its body, where it was whipped by the wooden stick, where the scales fell off, there were traces of blood slowly oozing out. These blood vessels were like stimulants, stimulating the energetic piranhas around them. After whipping away the piranha, Xueqi put away the sail. At the same time, Cha-Cha, who was in the air, flew down, grabbed a rope, and flew up again. The other end of the rope was tied to the canoe, and Cha-Cha pulled the canoe, quickly moving it away from the bloody river. The current wind direction was not suitable for using sails, so Xueqi kept the sails and let Cha-Cha continue pulling. When it was tired, it would return to the canoe to rest and use the wind and the sails to continue forward. Sometimes, in addition to these piranhas of different sizes, there were other fish, but those fish were only active in the water and would not jump up to cause trouble. However, if someone went into the water, it would be hard to say. As Xueqi was controlling the sail, he saw a fish that was much longer than the canoe slowly swimming past them. Because it was close to the surface of the river, the patterns on the fish's body could be clearly seen. Part of its spiked fins could also be seen. There were many such fish, but as long as these fish did not attack the canoe, it did not matter. Earlier there was a big fish, probably curious about the canoe, that used its head to hit the canoe, nearly capsizing the canoe. Xueqi had Cha-Cha quickly pull the canoe away, but the fish did not give up, continuing to hit the canoe until Xueqi had Cha-Cha stop and let the fish hit the canoe a few times. Finally, the fish felt bored and left. Fish had all kinds of habits. They had to travel during the day, so they could not sleep at night. Cha-Cha stood inside the canoe to rest, while Xueqi had to adjust the sail after a short nap. He also had to maintain vigilance. Although it was difficult, and there would be problems every day, they were all small problems that could be solved. Xueqi counted the number of days and roughly estimated the distance they had traveled. It had been 8 days, but they still did not see the riverbank, nor did they see any small islands or other places that protruded from the surface of the river. All they could see was the river water. He took out the roasted meat jerky from the animal skin bag and ate some. He also drank the water on the boat sparingly. Before he finished drinking the water, Xueqi would not drink water from the river. Cha-Cha ate in the air. Sometimes when it caught a fish, it would directly fly in the air, a little further away from the canoe. This way, the dripping blood would not cause any trouble for the canoe. While eating, Xueqi suddenly found a small island that protruded from the surface of the river diagonally ahead. He quickly adjusted the sail and headed there. However, as he got closer, Xueqi discovered that it was not a small island, but a huge fish. It was just that this fish was already dead and was floating on the surface of the water. Moreover, Xueqi also discovered that there were many holes in the fish's body, which were bitten through. The fish, which was more than 20 meters long, was eaten until only its skeleton and a layer of incomplete skin was left. Xueqi could also see from the bitten holes that there were still things inside the fish's body that were still gnawing. There were some small fish inside, with slender bodies. Looking at them alone, they were not conspicuous. But it was these small fish, which were not even as big as a palm, that gnawed this huge fish with sharp teeth and thick armor on its body until only its skeleton was left. Perhaps, after a while, even the bones and the skin full of holes would be gone. Xueqi quickly adjusted the sail and left this place. He also gestured to Cha-Cha, who had just finished eating in the air, to come down and see the fate of this huge beast. Be careful when you catch fish in the future. If you find these small fish, quickly throw them away. Xueqi said. Ayo, when Cha-Cha saw the fate of the big fish, it shook its wings. It probably did not expect such a situation. After the canoe sailed a distance away, Xueqi looked back and saw that the big fish that was originally floating on the surface of the water was sinking. It was almost completely eaten. Perhaps, sometimes, those ferocious and huge fish were not the biggest threat to people sailing on the water. Those inconspicuous fish were more likely to cause danger. Xueqi thought that Cha-Cha would rest for a while before continuing to fly into the air to pull the canoe. Unexpectedly, Cha-Cha stood on the canoe like a quail, crouching there with its neck shrunk. Its head was looking up at the sky, as if there was something in the sky that it was afraid of. "What's wrong?" Xueqi asked as he tapped Cha-Cha's bird head. He did not see anything in the sky, but he felt a great pressure in his heart. Cha-Cha called out softly, but its neck shrunk even tighter. Its eyes were still staring at the sky, but it did not fly up. The canoe gradually came to a stop. The wind that was blowing the sails had also stopped. Xueqi looked at the sky. He soon realized that the clouds in the sky had dispersed, revealing a large empty area. It was really developing towards a cloudless sky. If it was any other day, this would indeed be considered a sunny day. But here, it gave people a feeling of great pressure and fear. Not only Cha-Cha, but Xueqi also felt a sense of trembling, not daring to move. However, the current situation had to be resolved. The number of piranhas in the surroundings seemed to have decreased by a lot. Even the large fish that swam by from time to time could not be seen. It was really calm. But this calm phenomenon was too strange. A scene suddenly appeared in front of Xueqi's eyes. A large amount of fog was rising from the river. The fog looked very ordinary, with a sense of boundless fog. However, to be able to use this method to warn Xueqi, it was definitely not something ordinary. Xueqi took out the long-handled paddles from the canoe and began to row vigorously. "What are you still doing there? Hurry up and help. Otherwise we will all die," Xueqi said to Cha-Cha. Cha-Cha looked at the sky, grabbed the two long-handled paddles beside him, turned over, and began to row using the method that he had practiced many times in the tribe. With Xueqi and Cha-Cha's vigorous paddling, the canoe began to move quickly. Xueqi did not care about anything else. He only held back his strength and rowed with all his might. He did not even worry that the splashes would attract the attention of the other big fish. With the sound of the paddling, the canoe moved forward quickly. Xueqi's two arms became blurry. When both of his arms began to feel sore and tired, Xueqi picked up a stone needle and shot it into the air. When the needle was about 100 meters above the water, it let out a bang sound and instantly turned into fine powder. Seeing this, Cha-Cha was so frightened that he almost threw away the paddle. Xueqi also felt his scalp go numb. Under the clear, cloudless sky, something that made one's hair stand on end was happening in such a calm and eerie manner. "It's coming down. Hurry, row." Xueqi continued to row. This time, Cha-Cha was also anxious. In his panic, he broke the handle of the paddle, and the two paddles fell into the water. Cha-Cha did not bother to go back to pick them up. He grabbed the other two paddles in the canoe, wishing that he could grow two more nimble hands to row the paddles. The canoe moved quickly, like a speedboat with a high horsepower engine, rushing forward. "Hurry! Hurry! Hurry!" The pressure above their heads was getting stronger and stronger. Cha-Cha's feathers were all standing up. During the vigorous paddling, a feather fell from Cha-Cha's body, but was lifted up by Cha-Cha's vigorous paddling. Because there was no wind, the feather did not float high, about 20 meters. However, at this height of 20 meters above the water, the feather, like the stone needle, instantly turned into powder. Xueqi and Cha-Cha did not raise their heads to look. They did not have time to care about anything else. The pressure above them was still there, and it was still descending. If Xueqi could not escape, he would end up like the stone needle and the fallen feather. Xueqi was sweating all over. The sweat on his forehead slid into his eyes, and he felt a stinging pain. He did not bother to wipe it off, but quickly blinked twice. He was still staring forward, and his hands did not slow down at all. He did not calculate the time, and he could not calculate it. Xueqi did not know what was descending, and what its speed was. He could only focus all his attention on paddling, and controlling the direction to escape in a straight line. After rowing for an unknown amount of time, Xueqi heard a bang from behind. He woke up from his trance. The pressure above their heads was no longer there. Turning his head, he saw water vapor rising from the river behind him. Moreover, the water vapor was still increasing, like a thick fog. The canoe was still moving. Xueqi looked at the bird lying on its back and using all its strength to paddle. He lifted his leg and kicked it. "Okay, we're over." Cha-Cha was still immersed in paddling. When it was kicked by Xueqi, it was so frightened that it almost spread its wings and flew up. If Xueqi's hands were not fast enough, the two wooden paddles would have been lost again. The calm water surface rippled again, and the wind blew. Xiao Xian adjusted the sails, and with the help of the wind, they continued to move forward. As for Cha-Cha, he would let it rest for a while. It probably could not fly now. Chapter 153. Xiao Xian knew that this river was very big, but he didn't know it was this big. Sail, paddle, Cha-Cha pulling the canoe, these three methods alternated. Other than a short break, the canoe continued to move forward. According to the sun and the moon at night, Xiao Xian always judged the direction and tried his best to keep the canoe moving in a straight line. Although they encountered a lot of trouble along the way, and even encountered a group of crazy fish fighting, forcing them to take a long detour, it wasn't to the extent that they couldn't see the end of the river. After today, it will be 15 days, Xiao Xian said to Cha-Cha, who was resting beside him, as he still couldn't see the end of the river in front of them. Cha-Cha, who was resting at the side, responded listlessly. In addition to the excitement and novelty at the beginning, countless frightening things had happened one after another. It was so scared that it had recently lost a lot of feathers. Xiao Xian was also tired. He hadn't had a good rest for 15 days straight. Although his recovery was very strong, he couldn't withstand long-term exhaustion. Moreover, Xiao Xian was most worried that if they continued to move forward, they wouldn't have time to return. After all, according to the original plan, they would return if they couldn't find the other side in 15 days. But now, he felt that they should still move forward. Cha-Cha, do you think there's a mainland in front? Xiao Xian kicked the bird beside him. This river was already beyond his imagination. If they continued to walk forward, he would even believe that they could reach the sea. Cha-Cha, who was grooming its feathers, raised its head and replied, then looked forward. It could feel the aura of a mainland in front of them, but it didn't know how far it was. Xiao Xian actually had the same feeling. He felt that if they continued to walk forward, they would reach the other side of the river. But that was too risky. Even if they reached the other side, what if the river was already falling rapidly and they couldn't see the top? What should they choose? Continue forward, or go back? Xiao Xian closed his eyes and felt the totem in his mind. The totem flame in his mind started to roll, and the direction in which the flame was drifting was towards the front, and it was rolling quite violently. Opening his eyes, Xiao Xian adjusted the sail. Keep going. Ah, Cha-Cha answered weakly. It began to miss its life in the tribe. However, when it thought about the new land that Xiao Xian had mentioned, it became excited again. After traveling for another 8 days, Xiao Xian felt the totemic flames in his mind surging more violently, but at the same time, the river water was flowing faster. Xiao Xian had seen such a situation before. When this happened, the river level would drop sharply. Back in the tribe, they might still see a few rocks that were originally in the water, but the next day, they would see a muddy slope. Cha-Cha flew in the sky, pulling the boat. While Xiao Xian was pondering, Cha-Cha shouted from the sky. Xiao Xian looked up at the sky. Cha-Cha's cry meant that there was something in front of them. It was very likely that it was the riverbank. Cha-Cha landed, and Xiao Xian jumped onto its back. Then, he let Cha-Cha take it up into the air to take a look. It was not easy to see on the canoe, but in the air, they could see a very thin black line in the distance. If they did not look carefully, they would not have noticed it. Cha-Cha was still holding the rope in its claws, so it could not abandon the canoe and fly up alone. If it did, the canoe would be washed away by the river. Even if they could not fly higher to observe, Xiao Xian was already excited. After drifting on the river for more than 20 days, Xiao Xian had no confidence if he still could not see the end of the river. Even if the totemic flames were rolling fiercely, if they could not reach the shore before the river level dropped sharply, they would still die. Now that he could see the border, the pressure in his heart was greatly reduced. He felt that the exhaustion from the past 20 days had dissipated, and he felt much more relaxed. Okay, Cha-Cha, we're almost there. Put in more effort. Xiao Xian returned to the canoe, and Cha-Cha continued to pull. The river flowed faster and faster, and the number of piranhas in the water gradually decreased. He did not know if it was because of the change in the river, or because of other reasons. At least in the past 2 days, Xiao Xian did not encounter any other threats from the fish in the river. It was only the wind, the direction of the wind, and the speed of the river that slowed down the canoe's progress. The black line at the border became more and more obvious. Looking at the sky, Xiao Xian hoped that they could reach the shore before sunset. There were too many unknown variables at night. As they gradually approached the riverbank, Xiao Xian discovered that the riverbank looked like a mountain, because the river level had dropped too much. Fortunately, although it felt like they were sailing at the bottom of an abyss, they had finally reached the end of the abyss. This was a new place. Xiao Xian suddenly felt an indescribable excitement in his heart. The riverbank was similar to the one in the tribe. Near the shore, there was a steep slope. However, not far from there was still water flowing down. That should be a tributary, and the water flowing out of that tributary flowed into the river. But now that the river level had dropped, the water from that tributary flowed down the slope. The closer they got to the shore, the stronger the wind became. The wind carried with it the stench of mud and the smell of decay. Xiao Xian looked at the height of the shore and the steep slope. He thought that the canoe would not be able to reach the shore. After more than 20 days of sailing, although they had used very strong and corrosion-resistant trees, they had been hit and bitten by large fish during the voyage, leaving behind many crisscrossing marks. There was even a hole at the bottom. Xiao Xian used something to plug it. This canoe had already completed its mission. Xiao Xian carried the remaining things on the canoe onto his back. After Cha-Cha landed, he jumped onto Cha-Cha's back. One man and one eagle flew towards the riverbank. Without the eagle to pull the damaged canoe, it floated downstream along with the rapid flow of the river. Soon, only a small shadow was left, and then it disappeared from Xiao Xian's sight. The wind became stronger. Without a certain direction, Cha-Cha almost fell into the mud several times. "Let's go, buddy. Put in more effort." Xiao Xian held on tightly to the eagle's body and shouted. Cha-Cha flapped its wings with all its strength and flew upwards. While flying, Xiao Xian suddenly said, "Wait, let's go over there and take a look." Although it didn't understand why Xiao Xian wanted to go over there, Cha-Cha still turned and flew in the direction Xiao Xian pointed. Soon, Xiao Xian saw a figure trapped in the mud and being dragged down by seaweed. "Help me!" That person was still shouting. His voice was a little hoarse. It was obvious that he had been shouting for some time, but no one came over. Moreover, he didn't seem to have much strength left. Every time he shouted, he would gasp for breath. That person didn't sound very old. His body was covered in mud, and nearly 2/3 of his body had been pulled down. There were also seaweeds sticking out of the mud and wrapping around him. Cha-Cha couldn't get close, so Xiao Xian let Cha-Cha hold on to the rope. He tied the other end of the rope and jumped down. "Give me your hand," Xiao Xian said. Seeing Xiao Xian jump down from the eagle's back, the person was stunned. However, he quickly pulled his arms out of the mud with all his strength. Xiao Xian grabbed his arms and pulled them up. The seaweed was too tight. If Xiao Xian pulled them up forcefully, they would probably break the person's arms. Xiao Xian freed one hand and let Cha-Cha go down a little more. He took out his stone knife and quickly cut the seaweed sticking out of the mud. When Xiao Xian pulled the person up, the person who was trapped in the mud gathered the last of his strength and tried to break free from the seaweed still tied to his legs. Xiao Xian noticed that although this person's face was covered in mud and he couldn't see clearly, his irises were yellowish-brown. His pupils were vertical like blades, giving off a fierce, cold and merciless vibe. "I wonder which tribe he's from," Xiao Xian thought. Before Xiao Xian left, he went to the shaman's place for training and read almost all of the shaman's hidden scrolls. Xiao Xian knew too little about the person in front of him, so he couldn't match this person to the one recorded in the scrolls. When the person was finally pulled out of the mud, Cha-Cha began to fly up quickly. When he finally flew up and his feet touched the ground again, he suddenly felt a sense of fulfillment. This was solid ground, not the swaying surface of the river. The feeling of being rooted and solid was indeed more reliable. Cha-Cha also stood on the grassy ground and stepped on it a few times. As for the person who was rescued by Xiao Xian, he looked like an underage child. However, he was very vigilant against Xiao Xian, even though Xiao Xian had just saved his life. The person didn't say anything, so Xiao Xian didn't ask. After calming down, he began to pay attention to his surroundings. There were traces of human activity around. There weren't many, but he could see some. There were also mountains in the distance, and this area was mostly muddy. There were many potholes and pools of water. The natural depressions on the ground formed pools of different sizes. In addition, Xiao Xian also saw traces of claws and teeth on some of the rocks beside the pools. Those weren't made by humans. In the water? However, Xiao Xian didn't feel any danger from these pools, and neither did Cha-Cha. Either the creatures in the water were very good at hiding, or there weren't any dangerous creatures in the water at the moment. The person who was rescued by Xiao Xian lay quietly on the ground, panting. Although he didn't say anything, his eyes kept glancing at Xiao Xian and Cha-Cha. Finally, the child couldn't help but ask, "Who are you? Why are you in our tribe?" He asked. "Your tribe? Which tribe are you from?" Xiao Xian asked. Seeing that the other party was still very vigilant, he said, "My eagle and I came from a faraway place by boat. However, the river level dropped too quickly, so we quickly went ashore. The boat was washed away just now, and I don't know how far it has gone." "How long have you been in the river?" The other party didn't believe Xiao Xian's words, and looked at Xiao Xian suspiciously. He seemed very puzzled that Xiao Xian didn't know his tribe. "More than 20 days, Xiao Xian said. The other party's eyes widened, and the pupils in his tawny eyes were still narrowed. Chapter 154. In the animal skin scroll that the shaman showed Xiao Xian, there was no record of a tribe living here. What the scroll said was that this place used to be a wasteland. Back then, the ancestors of the tribe left their homeland for a new place. Unexpectedly, the earth cracked open, and the crack grew bigger and bigger until the end could not be seen. According to Xiao Xian's guess, after the huge crack appeared, because of the changes in the topography of other places, many tributaries flowed in and gradually filled the crack, turning it into a river. Because of this series of changes, creatures from the sea entered, such as those huge river beasts. However, this huge river formed because of the changes in the sky also blocked the ancestors' way back. The ancestors were always in awe of the things formed by the changes in the sky. Therefore, more often than not, even if they wanted to return, they would choose to find another way instead of returning directly from the river. In addition, the river was full of all kinds of threats, so their thoughts were even more diluted. Nearly 1,000 years had passed, and the Yanjiao tribe lived alone on the other side of the river. On this side of the river, there had also been a huge change. The once wasteland had become a wet area with many ponds and rivers, and there was even a tribe here. Fortunately, the language was interconnected, so communication was not that complicated. "What is the name of your tribe?" Xiao Xian asked. The other party did not answer. He stood up and carefully looked at Xiao Xian, and continued to ask, "You really stayed on the river for more than 20 days? "Yes," Xiao Xian answered. "You liar." After the other party shouted, he strode towards Xiao Xian, and with a fierce fist, he punched towards Xiao Xian's abdomen. Bang! Their palms met. The next moment, the opponent found that his fist was tightly clenched. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't break free. His eyes flashed with killing intent, and his other hand reached out like lightning. His two hands joined together, and like a clamp, he tightly clamped Xiao Xian's fist. At the same time, his ankles suddenly turned, and his body was in the air, spinning rapidly. The mud on his body splashed in all directions as he spun. Bang! His feet landed on the ground, and the spinning stopped. "Who told you to lie to me?" "Huh!" The expression on the person's face froze. His eyes widened as he stared at his hands in disbelief. He originally thought that he would break the other party's arm, but instead, he found that not only was his arm not broken, but both of his hands were tightly bound with straw ropes. He raised his head and looked at the person standing in front of him. Then, he looked at his own hands. How could this be? Xiao Xian looked at the person in front of him with a headache. He thought that the children of the Yanjiao tribe were fierce enough, but he didn't expect the one in front of him to be even more troublesome. If he said something wrong, he would use a killing move. If he hadn't pulled back quickly, his entire arm would have been twisted off. This brat was lying on the ground motionlessly just now because he was recovering his strength. It wasn't easy for him to recover a little, but he used it to deal with his savior. What should I say about him? The attack just now had used up almost all of the strength he had recovered. The person whose hands were tied was panting heavily as he glared fiercely at Xiao Xian. The layer of mud on his face and other parts of his body had been shaken off by the spinning just now. Although there were still traces of mud, Xiao Xian could already see that he was different. Xiao Xian noticed that when the other party attacked him just now, totem tattoos had appeared on his body as well. However, the totem tattoos were all over his body, connected together in small blocks. On his face, his mouth was split open, almost reaching the back of his ears. Looking at the mouth full of sharp teeth, Xiao Xian was willing to bet that the brat in front of him was planning to bite him directly later. Now that he had no strength, the tattoos on his body gradually disappeared, and his mouth returned to its original shape. I never knew that someone would try to kill their savior. I'm sure the people of your tribe aren't good people either. Xueqi said. You're the bad one. Thief. The other party was still stubborn. What did I steal? Which eye of yours saw it? How dare you accuse me of being a thief without seeing anything? This is called framing. Do you know what framing means? You only know how to talk nonsense. Is your brain filled with shit? Have you heard of the story of the farmer and the snake? Oh, you definitely haven't heard of it. It's about a snake that was saved by someone, but in the end, it bit the person who saved it. The next time you're in danger, let's see who will save you. Do you still remember the feeling of waiting for death? Xueqi blabbered on and on. He noticed that there were other people around, and most of them were with this brat. They had just arrived and were observing the situation. Xueqi had to tell them the truth and his grievances. If the other party still tried to kill him, then they could only fight or fly away with Cha-Cha. The person was stunned by Xueqi's words. Although he didn't understand a lot of the words Xueqi said, it didn't stop him from understanding the general meaning. Did he really do something wrong? After speaking, Xueqi snorted heavily, angry and disappointed. He walked to Cha-Cha's side and said, In the future, we'll stay away from your tribe and don't interact with ungrateful people like you. Do you know what it means to be ungrateful? Forget it. It's useless to talk to you. Cha-Cha, let's go. Wait. The person waiting in the forest quickly walked out and stopped Xueqi, who was about to jump onto the bird's back. The person who walked out was an adult and a child. The adult was a very sturdy man. Like the brat next to him, his eyes were yellowish-brown. However, the little girl standing next to him had blackish-brown eyes. She didn't look as fierce and gave people a feeling of gentleness. Seeing the person who walked out, the person whose hands were tied up said happily, Father. However, before he could rejoice for long, the person strode over and grabbed the animal skin shirt in front of his chest. He was lifted up and slapped a few times. The slaps were quite heavy. Xueqi. This kind of fierceness in educating children was too similar to the Yanjiao tribe. Everything had to be done after a beating. It was just that he didn't know if all tribes had this kind of barbaric style. She was already out of strength and had been beaten up by her father. She sniffled and did not dare to cry. She only looked rather aggrieved. The sturdy man who walked over didn't care about him and threw the person who was beaten up to the side. Xueqi, look after him. Okay. The girl who was following behind quickly replied. After beating up his child, the sturdy man looked at Xueqi and restrained the fierceness in his eyes. He tried his best to show a kind smile. However, no matter how he smiled, his eyes still gave people a cold feeling. I'm really sorry. Little brother. Were you the one who saved Chenjia? Oh, he is Chenjia, my child. My name is Fu Shi. The sturdy man said to Xueqi. That's right, I saved him. Xueqi sighed. It was my first time leaving the tribe, so I wanted to wander around and see the world. In the end, the first person I met was actually Sai. Xueqi told the story of how he met Chenjia, how he saved Chenjia, and how Chenjia, this little rascal, treated him. He didn't lie at all. Xueqi only came over when Chenjia's hands were tied up, so he didn't know what happened before. Therefore, Xueqi explained everything in detail. Moreover, he fully played the role of a friendly and kind ignorant person who went out to wander around. After listening to Xueqi's story, Fu Shi clenched his fists so tightly that they made cracking sounds. He glared at Chenjia fiercely. His eyes seemed to say, See if I don't teach you a lesson when we get back. Chenjia couldn't help but shrink back. When Fu Shi turned back to look at Xueqi, his face revealed a smile and he hurriedly apologized. He didn't forget to explain for his child. He's not usually like this. It's just that recently, some things were lost in the tribe and we couldn't catch the thief, so he became this crazy? Xueqi glanced at Chenjia. If it wasn't for his quick hands and ability to deal with it, if it was someone else, how could saving Chenjia's life only to have their arms twisted and broken? Obviously, Fu Shi also knew that his son was in the wrong. The tribe's reputation was already bad, and the shaman had always told everyone to be friendly to outsiders. But in the end, not long after, his own child gave his savior a killing blow. Simply asking for a beating. Knowing that Xueqi didn't know anything about the outside world, he said, This is the drumming tribe. We are all from the drumming tribe. Drumming tribe? Xian really hadn't heard of it. I come from the Yanjiao tribe. Xian looked at the other party and said while observing Fu Shi's expression. Fu Shi frowned and thought carefully, but he really couldn't remember. He simply couldn't find anything related to the Yanjiao tribe in his memories. Your tribe should be very far away, right? Fu Shi asked. Very far. I took a boat and stayed on the river for more than 20 days before arriving here. Xian said. Chen Jia, who was beaten up and thrown to the side, was about to say something when Xue Lan lightly kicked him. Only then did he swallow the words he was about to say. Fu Shi also seemed to be thinking about the possibility of what he said. Xian knew that their biggest suspicion was that he stayed on the river for more than 20 days. It seemed that he would have to explain more about this later. Although he was also suspicious, Fu Shi still warmly invited Xian to go back to the tribe with them. He said that he wanted to receive him properly, thank him for saving his child, and also apologize on behalf of his child. Looking at the sky, Xian agreed. He knew that the other party wanted to confirm his identity again, but Xian also thought about how to deal with them. Compared to leaving now, it was better to go back to the drumming tribe with them. He could also learn more about the situation here from them. Xian and Cha followed behind them and walked towards the central area of the drumming tribe. On the way, they met other drumming tribesmen. Their clothing and weapons were actually not much different from the Yanjiao tribe. At most, they were just a little more meticulous. Xian also discovered that there were two types of drumming tribesmen on the way. One type was like Chen Jia and Fu Shi, with yellow-brown eyes that looked very fierce. The other type was like the girl Xue Lan, with black-brown eyes that were gentler. Compared to the former, they gave off a more harmless feeling. After walking through a forest, many buildings appeared in front of Xian's eyes. Because the ground was very wet, there were many places with pools. Therefore, most of the buildings here were piled up, while the upper floors were built with dry railings. In front of many houses, on the lower steps of the stairs, there were some arm-length crocodiles lying on top of them resting. Chapter 155. This was a place with many crocodiles, and the marks Xian saw on the rocks by the pond should have been made by crocodiles. However, those frightening crocodiles lived together with the people of the tribe. They seemed to be very harmonious. What was more interesting was that Xian noticed the coldness in the eyes of the tribesmen when they looked at people. It was as if there was no emotion, only ferocious. Their vertical pupils were very similar to crocodiles. Were these people or crocodiles? Xian had never seen anyone other than the Yanjiao tribe. After coming to this world, he had only been moving around on the other side of the river, so he didn't know much about this world. Even though he had read the animal skin scrolls left behind by his ancestors, many of the records were not detailed, and he even had to rely on guessing. As for what the real world was like outside the tribe, Xian had to see it for himself. Cha didn't fly into the sky because Fu Shi said that the tribesmen were very vigilant against birds in the sky. So before getting permission from the tribe, they shouldn't fly into the sky. Otherwise, once they landed at a low altitude, they would be mercilessly attacked by the tribesmen. For this reason, Cha could only follow behind, step by step. Some of the small crocodiles resting on the steps or by the pond quickly climbed back into the water when Xian and Cha came over. They swung their tails hard and quickly sank into the pond. Seeing Xian staring at the small crocodiles, Fu Shi said, "The treasure fish are very vigilant against outsiders. Fortunately, the big ones have already left, so there are only these small ones. Otherwise, you would be in more danger. Outsiders shouldn't wander around. If you want to go out, you must be accompanied by tribesmen. Otherwise, you will be easily attacked." Fu Shi told Xian about the things to pay attention to in the drumming tribe, including the temperament of the crocodiles. Listening to Fu Shi's explanation, Xian was relieved. Fortunately, these people weren't crocodiles. They were just living in harmony with crocodiles. They even called crocodiles treasure fish, which showed how important these crocodiles were to the tribesmen. Xian also warned Cha not to eat these little crocodiles as food. Otherwise, the people of the drumming tribe would come over and punish them. It might even lead to a fierce battle. Just like the people in the tribe, there were two types of crocodiles. One had yellowish-brown eyes, dark brown scales on its back, and a light yellow belly. The smaller crocodiles were slightly lighter in color, with some black spots or net-like patterns. Even the baby crocodiles had carapaces that extended from their backs to their tails. Some of them even had horns on their heads. Xueqi had never seen anything like that in his previous life. This kind of yellow brown-eyed crocodile was very strong in its adult form. It had a violent temperament and was very aggressive. If an outsider walked around the tribe and encountered this kind of crocodile, they would be attacked by it. As for the other type of crocodile with dark brown eyes, its carapace was not so obvious, and it looked a little longer. Their tempers were gentler, and their eyes were less fierce. They looked just like the people in the tribe with dark brown eyes, and they looked more harmless. It seemed that this was the kind of tribe that worshipped animals. Xueqi remembered Fu Shi's words in his heart. Although the parents of these little crocodiles were not here, they would be back soon. In this unfamiliar place, he had to be careful. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to return alive. Looking at these crocodiles, Xueqi thought of the move that Chen Jia had used on him. Wasn't it similar to the crocodile's death roll? After entering the core area of the tribe, Fu Shi did not directly bring Xueqi to his home. Instead, he first went to the chief's place. Presumably, someone had already passed the news on the way. Outside the chief's house, there were a few people curiously looking at Xueqi and Cha-Cha. However, those pairs of eyes still looked cold, making Cha-Cha uncomfortably shake its wings. Several times it wanted to fly, but fortunately, Xueqi calmed it down. The chief of the drumming tribe, Fan Mu, was a strong middle-aged man. His eyes were also yellow-brown. When he looked at Xueqi, it was like a fierce beast in the forest staring at him. There was a sense of majesty and oppression. "Welcome to the drumming tribe." Fan Mu looked at Xueqi and said. There was no smile on Fan Mu's face. Of course, not smiling was also good. At least it was better than Fu Shi's emotionless smile. Yanjiao tribe, Xueqi. Xueqi introduced himself. This was what Xueqi had asked the shaman before he left. After leaving the tribe, he would show up as Xueqi. Its name is Cha-Cha, but my friend doesn't like to stand on the ground all the time. I hope you can allow it to fly for a while. Xueqi said. Okay. Fan Mu signaled to the people beside him, telling them not to attack Cha-Cha, but at the same time, to keep an eye on it. After Cha-Cha flew into the sky, Xueqi stepped on the stairs and followed Fan Mu into the house. In the house, there was a man with dark brown eyes, who looked older than Fan Mu. This is the shaman of our tribe. Fan Mu introduced. Hello, I am Xueqi from the Yanjiao tribe. Welcome to the drumming tribe. The shaman of the drumming tribe said. There was a trace of a smile on his face, which made him feel more amiable. The same words, when spoken by the shaman in front of him, made him feel more comfortable than when spoken by Fan Mu. Moreover, when the shaman smiled, he didn't have that stiff and intimidating feeling. The shaman was very similar to the old faker. He looked approachable and easy to talk to, but in fact, he was more cunning than anyone else. No matter what Xueqi thought in his heart, he still showed a reserved smile on his face, fully playing the role of a newcomer who left the tribe for the first time. Fu Shi, who led Xueqi here, was also called in by Fan Mu, and told him what happened when he met Xueqi. Xueqi added some things that Fu Shi couldn't explain clearly. Hearing that Xueqi had stayed on the river for more than 20 days, Fan Mu and the shaman's expressions changed. How did you stay on the river for more than 20 days? The shaman asked. Boat, oars and cha-cha. Xueqi told them some things he saw on the river, and some strange and dangerous phenomena, but he didn't mention the sail. Having a boat and an eagle pulling the boat was enough. With Xueqi's narration, Fan Mu and the shaman's expressions gradually eased. Obviously, they knew something about the river, and knew that Xueqi wasn't lying. Moreover, in their opinion, Xueqi was really lucky to come out of such a dangerous situation safely. However, the cha-cha also contributed a lot. If they also had such a bird that could pull the boat, they should be able to go further, right? I remember that wooden boats will sink when they are far away from the riverbank. Why didn't yours? Fan Mu stared at Xueqi and asked. Won't the wood sink when you reach the riverbank? In our tribe, even on the shore, once the wood enters the water, it will soon be dragged to the bottom of the river. Our tribe has a treasure fish, Fu Shi said proudly. Because there were many crocodiles near the riverbank, there were few other creatures, so the wood thrown into the water wouldn't be dragged down by the insects that gnawed on the wood. Then how did you do it? Fan Mu asked. Because it was the rainy season in our tribe. After the rainy season, there were no insects in the river, so the boat could go into the river. When the water level rose again, the insects would come back. How could that be? Xueqi's words surprised several people in the room. Our tribe's shaman asked me to take this with me. Xueqi took out the stone with the tribe's two-horn totem pattern and handed it to the shaman of the drumming tribe in front of him. The totem pattern drawn by the shaman was special. As a shaman, he could feel the totem power used when drawing it, as well as the emotions the shaman wanted to express. It was indeed friendly and warm. Cha-cha also has it. Xueqi walked to the door and whistled. The walkway outside the chief's house was much wider than others, and the planks were very strong. Cha-cha landed on the walkway outside the house. The shaman of the drumming tribe carefully looked at the totem pattern on Cha-cha's feet, and confirmed what Xueqi said just now. This bird was also blessed by the Yanjiao tribe's shaman. People or things that could be blessed by the tribe's shaman were all valued by the tribe. It was also hard to fake. Moving his hand away from Cha-cha's claws, the shaman nodded to the chief Fan Mu. The chief's cold eyes softened a little. After talking for a while, the shaman and the chief's suspicions about Xueqi had been greatly reduced. They had never heard of the Yanjiao tribe, but after talking, the shaman of the drumming tribe took the initiative to express his sincere enthusiasm. Hearing that it was Xueqi's first time out of the tribe, the shaman suggested that Xueqi stay for a while. After the Water Moon Festival, there will be people from the tribe going to other tribes to trade. You can go with them, the shaman said. The people next to him wanted to say something, but the shaman raised his hand to stop them. Then it settled. Fu sure, Xueqi will stay with you for the time being, the chief said. The chief's words settled this matter. The others didn't say anything more, but they still looked at Xueqi with vigilance. Okay, Fu sure replied. After leaving the chief's house, Fu sure took Xueqi home. Generally, outsiders were taken care of by whoever brought them in. Besides, Xueqi had saved Chenjia's life, so Fu sure and the others had to take good care of him. The sky gradually darkened, and the surroundings were damp with water vapor. The two moons in the sky kept the ground from being too dark. As the moons became rounder, even in the middle of the night, the surrounding scenery could be seen. Fu sure's house was also built in the style of a fence, built next to a pool. When Xueqi arrived, a woman was waiting there. That was Fu sure's wife, Ping. Next to Ping was Chen Jia, who was standing there obediently. His face was swollen. Obviously he had been beaten up again. Ping also showed her enthusiasm, but when she smiled, it made people feel uncomfortable. Her eyes were the same as Fu sure's and Chen Jia's, yellowish-brown. Xueqi, right? Thank you for saving my family's Chen Jia. After speaking, Ping carried down a large pile of things from a table outside the house. Everyone in the house hadn't eaten dinner yet. They had been waiting for Fu sure and Xueqi. Since the two of them had returned, Ping also prepared a feast. Xueqi only saw a shadow flash in front of him, and a whole deer leg was placed in front of him. The deer leg had been roasted, but it wasn't cooked. When the meat was torn open, blood flowed out. He raised his head to look at the other three. This family of three, their mouths had doubled in size. They were holding the food and tearing it apart. When they bit, blood spilled out, splattering all over the table. Xueqi. Chapter 156. Xueqi only ate a little of the deer leg and gave the rest to Cha-cha. Cha-cha liked to eat raw meat. The deer should be of the same breed as the giant horned deer. Their meat tasted similar. After seeing the way the three of them ate, Xueqi had a new understanding of the people of this tribe. At night, Cha-cha found a big tree outside and slept while standing on it. Xueqi slept in Chen Jia's room, while Chen Jia slept with his parents. The people of the drumming tribe did not put animal skins in their houses during this season. They slept directly on wooden planks, and through the gaps between the planks, they could see the water below. There were small crocodiles swimming below, and the subtle movements in the pond could be clearly heard. The windows were open, and the moonlight shone in. The wind carried the smell of water vapor and mud. This was the first night Xueqi spent after leaving the tribe, and it was a very novel feeling. Just as he was thinking about today's events, and about the drumming tribe, which was not recorded in the ancestral scroll, Fu sure came in. Fu sure was holding a glowing object in his hand. It was like a small lamp, illuminating the small room. This is... Xiao Xian was very curious about the object in Fu Shi's hand. It was a fist-sized glowing crystal. Xiao Xian had never seen it before in the Yanjiao tribe. This is a water moonstone, produced by our tribe. Fu Shi handed the stone in his hand to Xiao Xian. Water moonstone was seen in the scroll, but it was not recorded in detail, only a name. It was cold to the touch. Xiao Xian felt the energy within the stone. It was similar to the energy of a fire seed. The totemic flame in his mind did not react, but the egg wrapped around the totemic flame flashed. A shape gradually formed inside the totemic flame. It was a brown crocodile, surrounded by a circle of white flames, giving people a cold feeling. This was the totem of the drumming tribe. There was no energy in the crystal that could be absorbed. When the crocodile totem in his mind disappeared, Xiao Xian looked at the crystal again and handed it back to Fu Shi. It's very bright and beautiful. Fu Shi was stunned. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. Many people would reveal a look of fondness or greed after seeing the water moonstones. When a guest came to the tribe, the person in charge of receiving them would take out their own water moonstones. Not every tribe liked the night, so in order to be a good host, they would take out the biggest water moonstones they had in their collection. At the same time, this was also a good way to test people, which was something that the shaman had always advocated. But now, Xiao Xian's reaction was neither light nor heavy. Could it be that he didn't know the value of water moonstones? You don't like water moonstones? Our tribe's water moonstones are sold well. It's only this big, you can exchange it for a lot of things. Fu Shi exaggeratedly opened his arms and gestured. As someone who had seen electric lights, Xiao Xian did not have much interest in these glowing stones. What made him interested was that the shaman of the drumming tribe had mentioned the trade between tribes. Now that Fu Shi brought it up again, Xiao Xian seized the opportunity to ask. Trade, of course. We will take our water moonstones to other tribes and exchange them for other things. A small piece of water moonstone can be exchanged for a lot of things. Fu Shi told Xiao Xian about his tribe's most famous water moonstone. This kind of stone was indeed very popular with other tribes. It only needed a small piece to emit light. There was no need to light a fire. In the dark, one only needed one of these stones to see the surroundings. It was not afraid of being blown by the wind or flooded. Many people liked it, especially those who were afraid of high-temperature flames. This also reflected the value of the water moonstone. It was like a piece of gold. With it, the people of the drumming tribe could exchange for things they needed, such as good stones, precious herbs, pots and so on. Every time they traded, they would bring some water moonstones out and exchange for a lot of things. Xiao Xian listened with great interest and asked a few questions from time to time. When it came to his tribe's specialties, Fu Shi was also in high spirits. He explained the production of water moonstones and how to trade them. This was not because Fu Shi was not vigilant, but because many tribes knew about the water moonstones. It was not an absolute secret. They talked until late at night. Xiao Xian let Fu Shi go back. As for the water moonstone, Xiao Xian also let him take it away. With such a bright stone, how could he sleep? If there was an accident, it would be hard to hide. The night was full of danger, but it was also a kind of cover. Other people's houses were dark, but this room was bright. Wasn't this an obvious target? Fu Shi did not know what Xiao Xian was thinking. He only thought that Xiao Xian was a good person. After returning to his room, he praised Xiao Xian to his wife. In return, the couple lectured Chen Jia again. The next day, Xiao Xian ate a bloody breakfast and went out. The sun was already out. The small crocodiles in the pool climbed out to bask in the sun. In the pool in front of Chen Jia's house, there were 3 small crocodiles. 2 had yellow-brown eyes and 1 had black-brown eyes. When Cha-Cha landed next to them, she even tried to scare them. The 3 small crocodiles were so scared that they ran back into the pool. Before they entered the pool, Xiao Xian heard their cries. Only the 2 yellow-brown-eyed crocodiles were crying. The other black-brown-eyed crocodile did not make a sound. In other words, its cries were different from other crocodiles. Normal people would not be able to hear it. Xiao Xian thought that all black-brown-eyed crocodiles were like that. However, he found that the black-brown-eyed crocodile in the pool next door made the same cries as other crocodiles. The crocodile in front of the pool was an exception. Because of this, Xiao Xian asked Chen Jia, who was kicking water at the side. Chen Jia was still a little awkward. His father said that Xiao Xian really did not know anything. He also did not have much interest in the water moonstone. Moreover, the other party had saved him before. When he thought of his own actions, he felt embarrassed. "It can't cry," Chen Jia said. "It can't cry?" "Yes, it couldn't cry when it was born. My mother said that it was mute and very pitiful. So every time, she gave it a lot of meat to eat, the best meat." When he was in the tribe, Xiao Xian could hear the cries of night swallow. Other than high-level totemic warriors, no one else could hear it. Now, Xiao Xian could also hear its cries, but Chen Jia could not. Fu Shi and Ping were both intermediate-level totemic warriors. It could be seen from their eyes. Compared to Chen Jia's eyes, their eyes were more yellow. This was a characteristic of the drumming tribe. Beginner and intermediate-level totemic warriors could not hear it, but it was unknown if higher-level totemic warriors could hear it. After Cha-Cha left the pool, the black brown-eyed crocodile climbed out of the pool and continued to bask in the sun. At this time, someone ran over. "Chen Jia, where's your father?" the person asked. "In the house." "Fu Shi, come out quickly," the person shouted. "What's wrong?" Fu Shi walked out and asked. "Go over, the chief has something to say." Seeing the other party's dignified expression, Fu Shi knew that the matter was quite serious. He did not hesitate and hurriedly left. Before leaving, he warned Chen Jia, "Don't run around. If you run again, I'll beat you to death." Chen Jia's mouth twitched, and he reluctantly replied with an N. Ping was not at home, so there was only Xiao Xian and Chen Jia here. Xiao Xian looked at the surrounding families. People were all called out, so something big must have happened. "What happened in your tribe?" Xiao Xian asked. "I don't know, it's probably about the water moonstones," Chen Jia said. Thinking about what Fu Shi said last night, Xiao Xian said, "You mean there might have been thieves who stole the water moonstones?" "Yes, every year at this time, there would be people from the tribe who would come and steal the water moonstones when they come out." Mentioning the water moonstones, Chen Jia gnashed his teeth. The stolen water moonstones could be exchanged for a lot of things. "Who came to steal the water moonstones?" Xiao Xian asked. "Many other tribes, and maybe even thieves. Every time thieves appear, a lot of water moonstones are stolen. They deserve to die the most." In the afternoon, Fu Shi hurried back with some stone tools and warned Xiao Xian and Chen Jia not to run around. Someone in the tribe discovered the drumming tribe. "The tribe's defense has been strengthened. Tonight, I'll be in charge of guarding, so I won't be coming back. Don't go out." Finishing his words, Fu Shi hurriedly left. The people in the surrounding houses were like Fu Shi, taking their tools and hurrying out. Every one of them had a dignified expression, their eyes filled with killing intent. Waiting for Fu Shi to leave, Xiao Xian asked Chen Jia, "What are the drumming tribe people like?" Chen Jia showed a rare expression of fear and resentment. "The drumming tribe people are crazy. In order to achieve their goals, they will do anything. They are not afraid of death. They are very fast." Listening to Chen Jia's somewhat messy explanation, Xiao Xian speculated that the drumming tribe people were similar to death warriors. In their eyes, there was only the goal. Nothing else was important. They were really a group of lunatics. This group of lunatics was not close to the drumming tribe, so they did not appear often. However, every time they appeared, they would set off a reign of terror. And this time, the drumming tribe's goal was most likely to be the water moonstones. Because the drumming tribe had been discovered, everyone was very nervous. Even during dinner, their appetite had decreased. Ping and Chen Jia did not eat much. After eating, Ping went to deliver food to Fu Shi, telling Chen Jia to stay at home obediently. However, Chen Jia was not a person who would wait at home. When other companions came to look for him, he would leave with them to discuss their own plans. Thus, the only one left in the house was Xiao Xian. The sky had not completely darkened yet. Xiao Xian sat on a wooden plank beside the house. Sitting on it, his legs hung down, allowing him to directly reach into the water. The water rippled, and a figure swam towards Xiao Xian. It was the small crocodile with dark brown eyes. After it swam over, it looked at Xiao Xian. It seemed to be very curious about Xiao Xian, and did not show any signs of fear. After thinking for a while, Xiao Xian reached out his hand and picked up the small crocodile. It had webbed toes, and compared to the other two, it was slimmer. Just now when he saw it crawl and swim, it was very agile. Other than its cries that could not be heard, it was completely healthy. After being caught, the small crocodile did not run away. It obediently stayed in Xueqi's hand. Its temper was indeed much gentler than the one with dark brown eyes. Xueqi thought. After observing it for a while, Xueqi put it back into the water. Chapter 157. That night, Ping and Chenjia did not return. Fu Shi needed to continue guarding and would not return for the whole night. After Cha threw down a deer he caught from God knows where, he found a tree to eat and rest. Xueqi was the only one in the house. Xueqi could not walk around. Now that the drumming tribe was in a tense period, as an outsider, Xueqi could not run around and attract suspicion. As a newcomer, it was better to make a good impression. If there was a day when the Yanjiao tribesmen could smoothly cross over from the other side of the river, they would inevitably greet the drumming tribesmen. Xueqi crossed his legs and rested on the wooden planks in the room. As Xueqi swayed his legs, the wooden planks below him creaked slightly. As he was thinking, Xueqi heard a few humming sounds coming from outside. It sounded like someone was pinching their nose. These sounds were not made by humans, but by the small crocodiles. Listening to the sounds, it came from the pond where Chenjia's family lived. It was just that it was not near the house. After a few short cries, the cries came to an abrupt end, but very quickly, more cries came out. Only, the cries after that were different from the ones before. The one who made the last sound was the brown-eyed small crocodile that was thought to be mute. The surrounding small crocodiles did not often cry out. They only cried out when they felt threatened or when they felt danger. For example, the 3 small crocodiles that Cha had teased that day had all cried out. The tribesmen said that these small crocodiles were very sensitive to likes and dislikes. Even if you smiled and looked very kind, if you had bad intentions, these small crocodiles would still avoid you or directly bite you. At this time, what exactly did the 3 small crocodiles in the pond encounter that caused them to cry out like that? The sounds outside continued. Xueqi got up and looked outside. He did not see anything out of the ordinary, but somewhere in the pond, the cries continued. The other tribesmen should not be able to hear its cries. If other small crocodiles continued to cry out like this, someone would have already come to check on the situation. After thinking for a while, Xueqi walked out of the house and headed towards the source of the cries. On the side of the pond, not far from Chenjia's house, 2 small crocodiles lay motionless in the grass. There was the smell of blood. Xueqi squatted down and used his hands to push the 2 small crocodiles over. Their light-colored abdomens show obvious traces of blood, as if they had been split in half. They were killed with a single blow from a sharp weapon. The roar just now, it should be these 2 small crocodiles. After a few cries, it suddenly stopped. It was at that time that they encountered the killer. The 2 little crocodiles died in the same way. They were killed in a single blow. They were extremely fast and almost didn't make a sound. He was flipping one of the crocodiles open when he heard hurried footsteps, followed by an angry roar. "What did you do to them?" It was a 15 or 16-year-old girl with tawny eyes. Thinking of this kind of person's impatience and temper, Xueqi was about to explain, but when she saw the crocodiles lying on the ground, she exploded. "You're looking for death." She seemed to have gone crazy, not giving Xueqi a chance to explain. Even if Xueqi spoke, she would not listen. The totem patterns on her body appeared, and she exerted strength in her legs, increasing her speed in an instant. Her whole body flew through the air towards Xueqi. As she pounced, her entire hand doubled in size, turning into a claw. Combined with the totem patterns on her hand, it looked as if it was covered with a layer of scales. Her fingertips also emitted a crisp sound. Like a ruthless beast, she mercilessly clawed at Xueqi. If he did not dodge, this slender hand would latch onto Xueqi's arm. Then, like a crocodile biting onto its prey, she would twist and tear his arm off. In the face of such a vicious attack, Xueqi reached out and grabbed her wrist before she could grab his arm. However, he did not stop. Instead, he took the opportunity to pull her to the side of the pool. Splash! She was flung into the pond. The surrounding people had already heard the commotion and came out. Under such a tense situation, with roars and the sound of someone falling into the water, it would be strange if they did not notice. The surrounding families, regardless of gender, ran out with tools and surrounded Xueqi. The children were not allowed to come out. They only stuck their heads out of their windows or doors to look over. On the grass beside the pond, the 2 dead crocodiles were very conspicuous. The people of the drumming tribe had always paid attention to crocodiles, so the 2 crocodiles next to them attracted their attention even more. Originally, they thought it was just a quarrel between 2 parties, but after seeing the 2 dead crocodiles, the people who surrounded them became angry. For Xueqi, an outsider, the surrounding families had always been on guard against him. They did not allow their children to come in contact with Xueqi. There were several times when their children were curious about the eagle and wanted to go over to take a look, but the adults made up stories to scare them. Now, with this scene in front of them, it was needless to say. "I didn't kill them," Xueqi said. "If it wasn't you, who else could it be?" "It must be him." Banling saw it just now. The surrounding people shouted. They looked at Xueqi fiercely. Just as they were about to attack, they heard a shout from behind, "Stop!" Hearing this voice, the person who was about to attack immediately halted his movements and turned to look behind him. There were 2 people who came over. Xueqi recognized one of them. It was Chun, the wife of Fan Mu. She was also the one who had shouted for them to stop. As for the young man standing next to her, Xueqi did not recognize him. However, the young man had dark brown eyes and gave people the impression that he was calmer. At first glance, he seemed more harmless than the others, but Xueqi's intuition told him that this person was more difficult to deal with. "What happened?" Chun walked over and asked. "He killed 2 small treasured fish. Yes, he even attacked Banling. I already said that outsiders don't have good intentions. We should have kicked him out long ago." The surrounding people began to talk at once, telling him everything that had happened. After listening, Chun did not immediately ask Xueqi. Instead, she walked over and picked up the 2 dead crocodiles. Xueqi could feel that Chun's hands were trembling as she held the 2 crocodiles. She was trying her best to control her emotions. She also had dark brown eyes, but she wasn't as reckless as the others. After looking at the wounds on the crocodiles, Chun asked Xueqi, "What do you say?" "I didn't kill them. I just came over and saw that there was something wrong with them. I turned them over and found that they were already dead. When I picked them up to take a look, she came over." Xueqi pointed at the person walking out of the pool. "Banling, did you really see him kill the small treasured fish?" Chun stared at the person walking out of the pool and asked in a deep voice. Banling had just been thrown into the water and was still in a sorry state. When asked, she didn't have time to tidy up her hair and said, "I saw him holding the small treasured fish in his hand." "In other words, you didn't see Xueqi kill the small treasured fish?" Chun's tone was not very good, and the surrounding people could hear it. Moreover, after Chun took the 2 crocodiles, many people saw the wounds on the crocodiles. They knew that they were killed by a sharp weapon. Xueqi didn't have such a weapon on him. Perhaps they really had wrongly accused him. Thinking of their actions just now, the people surrounding Xueqi all retreated in embarrassment. The people who had shouted especially loudly now wished they could bury their heads in their pants to reduce their presence. But there were also some people who were unconvinced. They felt that judging Xueqi wasn't the murderer based on a single wound was too arbitrary. Perhaps Xueqi was still hiding some secrets? Thinking of this, they took a step forward and were about to say something when they saw Xueqi turn around and walk towards the pool. The surrounding people of the drumming tribe were very curious about Xueqi's reaction. What was he doing? Xueqi walked to the side of the pool, but he didn't enter it. Instead, he stretched out his hand to the side. Soon, the water rippled and a small figure came out of it. It turned out that there was a small hole there, and it was hiding in it. After swimming out, the small crocodile directly climbed onto Xueqi's hand. It was actually crying out, but no one could hear it, including the tribe's senior totemic warrior, Chun. Seeing the small crocodile in Xueqi's hand, the person who had stepped forward and wanted to argue retracted his leg. If Xueqi was the murderer, this small crocodile wouldn't have acted like this. The people of the drumming tribe didn't believe in Xueqi, but they believed in their tribe's treasured fish. Banling. Chun glared. Thinking about what Banling had done, Chun couldn't help but feel angry. The tribe's reputation was already bad enough, but this group of people kept on offending people. Yesterday, Chen Jia had attacked his savior, and now, Banling was attacking people without even knowing the truth. The shamaness and chief were doing their best to salvage the drumming tribe's bad reputation. Outsiders who knew about the drumming tribe were already on guard against them, and it was difficult to form good relations with them. Now that there was an outsider who had never heard of the drumming tribe, the shamaness and chief wanted to keep him here and let Xueqi see the good side of the drumming tribe. They also wanted him to know that the people of the drumming tribe weren't as bad as outsiders thought. The result? She was really angry. Fortunately, Xueqi's strength wasn't bad. Otherwise, Ban Ling, who had been baring her fangs and brandishing her claws at Xueqi, was completely listless. Chun's roar made her shoulders tremble, and she took small steps forward, completely losing her previous momentum. Sir. Ban Ling apologized to Xueqi, her voice sounding as if she was about to cry. Xueqi, right? I'm sorry, but just treat what I said as if it was eaten by the fish. Don't take it seriously. The one who spoke the loudest just now was the one who spoke the loudest. Perhaps he still felt sorry for Xueqi, so he turned around and ran home. After a while, he carried a bloody cow leg and stuffed it into Xueqi's hand as an apology. Seeing this, the others also wanted to follow suit. At this time the person standing beside Chun said, "Mother, the most important thing now is to find the person who killed the fish." Saying this, he looked at the others, his dark brown eyes calmly sweeping the surroundings. Xueqi is our tribe's guest. In the future, if anyone dares to make a move without clarifying the situation, come find me. Xueqi discovered that after the youth finished speaking, the surrounding people were trembling. They were even more afraid than when Chun had scolded them. Chapter 158. What's wrong? Ping had gone to deliver food to Fu Shi and talk to the guards for a while. She had just returned, but before she entered the house, she saw people surrounding the pond and quickly walked over. Ping, 2 treasured fish were killed here. A woman with a loud voice said. Ping was shocked. After hearing the details, she wanted to tear the murderer into pieces. Unfortunately, the murderer was still unknown. When she heard that Xueqi was misunderstood again, she was very dissatisfied. Xueqi is a good person. He doesn't even want my water moon stone. What? There was actually someone who didn't like the water moon stone. The surrounding people suddenly felt that Xueqi was too safe. Those who wanted to steal the water moon stones in their tribe were not good people. Compared to them, Xueqi was an outsider who was not interested in the water moon stones. Everyone suddenly felt more comfortable around him. But thinking about it, how could Xueqi not like the water moon stone? It was such a good thing. Why didn't he like it? Xueqi, the water moon stone is really good. You can exchange it for many things in other tribes. Yes, Xueqi. It must be because Fu Shi's water moon stone is small and dark. Maybe it's an old stone that has been there for a few years. Come to my house. Our water moon stone is big and bright. We just fished it out last year. If it comes out this year, there will definitely be bigger ones. Come to my house. My water moon stone is big too. My daughter personally put it away last year. Alright, my daughter is over there. She's very pretty. Xueqi, you will definitely like her. The auntie who spoke narrowed her eyes and pointed in the direction of her house. Xueqi looked in the direction the auntie was pointing at. There was a young lady standing on the steps of a house. At this moment, the lady was smiling at him with her mouth wide open from ear to ear. Probably because she had just eaten dinner, there were still traces of blood on her white teeth. It was really a big mouth. Ha! Xueqi turned his head and smiled stiffly. Fortunately, this was not the time to talk too much. Chun took away the 2 dead crocodiles and told everyone to pay attention to the surroundings. Also, pay attention to the small crocodiles in the pools around their houses. Xueqi returned to the house covered in blood, holding the beef leg. Although he had been wrong twice, he really didn't know what to do with this group of people. After all, he wasn't injured. Moreover, Xueqi wanted to follow them to learn more about other tribes. Now that the drumming tribe also wanted to leave a good impression on them, Xueqi wouldn't quarrel with them because of this. Ping looked at the baby crocodile in Xueqi's hand and felt sad. She had watched them break out of their shells. When they broke out of their shells, because the big crocodile had already left, she had personally helped them break out of their shells. Many people in the drumming tribe were rash and irritable, but they were also easily emotional. When they were emotional, they would talk a lot. After Ping returned, She told Xiao Xian a lot about the little crocodiles. The current batch of crocodiles in the tribe were not born during the breeding season, so they were in the minority. Without the protection of the big crocodiles, these little crocodiles were easily harmed. Therefore, every year, the people in the tribe would take special care of these little crocodiles. Generally speaking, the big crocodiles that had left would return here after the 2 moons overlapped and the river rose again. They would then lay eggs and hatch their young. At that time, a large number of baby crocodiles would be born. Seeing that only one of the 3 little crocodiles was left, Ping started crying as she spoke. At this time, Chen Jia also returned home. To distract Ping, Xiao Xian brought the brown-eyed baby crocodile back to the room. Now that he had calmed down, he carefully recalled the movements he had heard before, as well as the details he saw when he walked to the pool. Although this was not the core area of the drumming tribe, there were still many houses. Other than the people guarding outside, how could there be people walking around outside? How could a fearsome beast sneak in from outside without a sound? If it was not done by an internal member, then the person who killed the 2 little crocodiles was too capable. The little crocodile that Xiao Xian brought back was still crying out. It was probably scared stiff and did not want to return to the pool. Instead, it kept following Xiao Xian. The 3 little crocodiles were from the same nest and often moved together. Even if they were separated, they would not be too far apart. The people in the tribe said that these little crocodiles were very sensitive to people's likes and dislikes. Perhaps they discovered that person, which was why they cried out. They were also killed because of their cries, because if they were allowed to cry out, it would attract other people's attention. Now the crocodile that could cry out was dead, and the mute in front of him saved its life. After comforting his mother, Chen Jia was beaten up again. He came to Xiao Xian and asked, "When you went over, you only saw the little fish that was killed. Did you really not see anyone?" Xiao Xian raised his head and looked at Chen Jia. This child had been beaten up because he ran around at night, but this injury was nothing to them. "I didn't see any strangers," Xiao Xian said. Although he was not familiar with the surrounding families, he had seen them once and had an impression of them. At that time, he did not see anyone else around, and before that, he did not notice any strangers around. Not necessarily strangers. For example, someone familiar? Chen Jia was somewhat conflicted. He was not good at hiding his thoughts, and his expression told Xiao Xian what this child was thinking. As an outsider, Xiao Xian would not easily talk about the matters of the drumming tribe. Instead he asked, "Yesterday, who pushed you down the river?" Chen Jia raised his head in surprise. "How do you know I was pushed?" After coming back, he only told others that he accidentally fell down, but did not tell anyone the truth. "I guessed," Xiao Xian said. Although Chen Jia looked unreliable, from many details, this child was still very cautious. It was impossible for him to know that there was danger at the riverbank and still go there. Perhaps the drumming tribe's chief and shaman also knew, but they did not interrogate Chen Jia. They might even know more. Those 2 were not simple-minded people. After hiding the secret in his heart for 2 days, Chen Jia felt that he could not hold it in any longer. However, he did not dare to tell the others in the tribe. Just now, when he was outside, he tried to ask his friends about it. Their reactions were very strong, and they felt that it was definitely not someone from the tribe who did it. "So, you think there is a mole?" Xiao Xian asked. "What is a mole?" "It means that the person who did this is someone who is hiding in the tribe." "Yes." Since they all said that Xiao Xian was a good person, then he should be able to tell, right? Chen Jia thought to himself. "That day when I sneaked out to play, I saw some people walking towards the riverbank, so I followed them. There were other people there. I heard them talking, but I did not hear what they were saying. After they left, when I walked to the riverbank, I was pushed by someone." Chen Jia told Xiao Xian about what happened that day. "What did that person look like?" "I don't remember." Chen Jia bit his hand, feeling very conflicted. He really tried very hard to think, but he just could not remember. He always felt that the person's face was blurry, but looking at the figure, he really did look like someone from the tribe. If not, he would not have kept this a secret. He really could not remember what that person looked like. Xiao Xian patted Chen Jia's shoulder. "If you don't remember, then forget it. Also, don't tell anyone about this. Even if you do, you have to find someone you absolutely trust. For example, your parents. If that mole knows that you know a lot of things, You might end up like the two little treasured fish that were killed tonight. Why? Chen Jia's face was full of fear. Because they can cry. Xiao also touched the mute little crocodile in his hand. But it can't, so it survived. Chen Jia was not too stupid. After thinking for a while, he understood Xiao's meaning. With a pale face he said, I'll go find mother first. Regardless of whether the truth was as Xiao imagined, at least by scaring Chen Jia would not run around alone. Otherwise, there was a real possibility that he would be killed. When there are many tribes, it is easy to get chaotic. Don't you think so? Xiao tore off a piece of meat and put it in front of the little crocodile's mouth. The teeth of crocodiles belong to the truncated tooth type. They can't directly bite off a piece of meat like cats, so they have to roll or sway to bite off the meat. This is the familiar death roll and sway dance of the crocodile. Seeing the little crocodile roll around after biting the meat, Xiao thought of the people in the tribe, as well as Caesar and the others. He wondered how they were doing now. When he left the tribe, he didn't think so, but now he missed them. He remembered that on the day he left, Xiao wanted to tell the shaman and old Ku not to worry. In the end, he only said 2 words before they beat him up with their crutches. Thinking of this, Xiao couldn't help but laugh. The moonlight outside the window was even brighter than last night. Soon, it would be the day when the 2 moons overlapped. If he wanted to go back, he would have to wait at least a year. In the next few days, the tribe was very peaceful. There were no more abnormal situations, but Fu Shi and the other tribe guards were even more vigilant. The day when the 2 moons overlapped was one of the most important days of the year. Other than the sacrificial ceremony, it was also one of the most important days. They called it the Water Moon Festival. In the drumming tribe, there was a small river winding around the tribe. The people of the drumming tribe called it the Water Moon Path. Before and after the 2 moons overlapped, when the river level lowered, the Water Moon Path would be separated from the river. When the 2 moons overlapped in the night sky, every family of the drumming tribe would guard the path closest to their house, waiting for the water moonstones to appear so that they could go down to collect them. Even though Xiao was curious about the production of the water moonstones, in order to avoid suspicion, he didn't take the initiative to follow them. However, Ping was very enthusiastic. It was probably because someone said that her family's water moonstones weren't good that night. She wanted to prove it in front of Xiao, so she let Xiao go with her. Fu Shi was responsible for guarding the path, so he didn't go with Ping and Chen Jia. My family's will definitely be the best this year. Nonsense, my family's is the best. You guys don't need to argue. In any case, the first place will definitely be my family. Before they even reached the water moon path, a group of children had already started arguing. The tribe had given each family an area. When the time came to collect the water moonstones, they could only collect them in their own area. Whether they collected more or less, they had to bear the responsibility. It had nothing to do with others. Xiao, Ping, and Chen Jia stood together. This was the area of Chen Jia's family. Looking at the muddy river in front of them, which was no more than 5 meters wide, it was hard to associate it with the name Water Moon Path. Xiao was looking forward to what would happen next. Such a bright stone. How did it come out from this muddy river? The 2 moons overlapped more and more in the sky. Xiao suddenly heard a dense and small sound, as if iron powder was being forcefully attracted by a magnetic force. The muddy river in front of them was becoming clearer and clearer at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 159. Ping and Chen Jia stood on the shore, waiting nervously. The amount of water moonstones they could produce in this section would determine whether they would be rich or poor in the coming days. If they could produce a lot of water moonstones, and each of them was big and bright, their family would be rich this year. When the trading day came, they could bring them out to exchange for a lot of things. However, if the stones they produced were small, then it would be hard. Whether they were poor or rich, it all depended on this part of the river. Xiao felt that this method was very novel. Ping was already praying nervously. Chen Jia was also biting his hands. He liked to bite his hands when he was nervous. The muddy river water became clearer and clearer. In less than 10 minutes, it had already become translucent. There was even light emitting from the bottom of the river. It was even more eye-catching than the moon in the sky. The muddy river gradually became clear. At the bottom of the river they could see some things emitting light. Those were the water moonstones. The white light passed through the river and reflected in the eyes of the people on the shore. Ha 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 ha. Some people laughed wildly. Their part of the river was especially bright. This meant that there would be more water moonstones produced there. Some people were happy, while others were worried. Some parts of the river were dimmer than others. There were a lot less water moonstones there. Ha ha ha. Chen Jia also laughed arrogantly. Their part of the river was brighter than the other two families. He laughed and made a gesture to the other two families, showing off. Ping knelt by the riverbank, watching the white light at the bottom of the river get brighter and brighter. She was so excited that no one knew what she was mumbling. The surrounding families looked at Chen Jia and his mother with envy and jealousy. But there was nothing they could do. Whether it was more or less, they had already determined it. Even if they were jealous, they couldn't snatch it. They could only comfort themselves that maybe next year, their family would become like that. Xueqi felt the power of the fire seed. The fire seed of the drumming tribe? What kind of fire seed was this tribe that lived in the puddles and rivers? In the Yanjiao tribe, the shaman was able to connect the fire seed's power to the houses at the top of the mountain. That was why the houses at the top of the mountain were always warm during the winter. And here, the production of these water moonstones seemed to be closely related to the fire seed of the drumming tribe. No wonder Fu Shi said that this was their drumming tribe's specialty. The power of the fire seed was special. After Ping prayed and expressed her gratitude, she turned to Chen Jia, who was already itching to give it a try, and said, "Enter the water." "All right." Chen Jia flung off the beast's skin coat on his body, covering his entire body with totem patterns, and jumped into the clear and bright river. Many children from other families were like Chen Jia, impatiently jumping into the water to fish for the water moonstones. Xueqi noticed that when the children were swimming, their legs weren't alternately kicking the water. Instead, they were swaying left and right. Their bones seemed to have been softened. The totemic patterns covered their bodies like scales. At first glance, it looked like the powerful tail of a crocodile that was swaying in the water. The people of the drumming tribe were good swimmers. Even if they were underwater, they could stay underwater for a long time. Therefore, the work of digging the water moonstones from the bottom of the river was extremely simple for them. As the first stone dug out this year, they had to choose a big one. The people of the drumming tribe believed that a good start would lead to better results. Perhaps there would be more stones as big as this one dug out later. Therefore, the first stone had to be chosen well. Chen Jia swam back and forth at the bottom of the river. Finally, he chose a spot and dug out a very big and bright water moonstone. He didn't swim upstream, but turned around and threw it towards the riverbank. The water moonstone that was thrown out of the water was accurately caught by Ping. She wiped the water off the stone and looked at it excitedly. She was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth, and the smile on her face grew wider and wider. After looking at it for a while, Ping didn't put it into the basket at the side. Instead, she handed it to Xueqi. "Xueqi, look. This is the stone my family produced this year. Isn't it big? Isn't it bright? You can definitely exchange it for many good things." Xueqi took it. It was cool to the touch, but it was much brighter than the one Fu Shi showed him that night. This was because it was newly produced. However, Xueqi still couldn't absorb any energy from it. He could only feel that this stone was related to the drumming tribe's fire seed and totem. Other than the fire seed and totem, these stones were also closely related to the crocodiles that had followed the river downstream. According to the people of the drumming tribe, when the crocodiles returned, they would spit out some stones from their stomachs into the water moon canal. These stones would eventually become water moonstones. Every year, after the water moonstones were picked out, new stones would enter, and the next year, new stones would be picked up. But without these crocodiles, there wouldn't be any water moonstones here. The people of the drumming tribe didn't know how many stones were spat out by the treasured fish, and which of these stones could become water moonstones. Even if it was artificially changed, the results would be different from what they expected. In the end, they could only pray to the totem, hoping for more gifts. This was also the main reason why the drumming tribe called the crocodiles the treasured fish. Xueqi had a classmate in his past life who also raised crocodiles. He also heard that his family's crocodiles ate stones, and the stones they ate were called stomach stones. They were used to help the crocodiles grind down food that was difficult to digest. He wondered if the stones the drumming tribe's crocodiles spat out in the water moon canal were also used as stomach stones. Previously, The most turbid river in the entire tribe actually produced such bright water moonstones. What a magical place! After looking, Xueqi carefully placed the stone into a rattan basket at the side. Seeing Xueqi's actions, Ping's impression of Xueqi became even better. She fished out the newly placed stone and stuffed it into Xueqi's hands. Take it. When you go out in the future, you can use it to exchange for many good things. When you go to other tribes to exchange for things you want, you'll know how good water moonstones are. This was the feeling of becoming a nouveau riche. With such a big stone, giving it away didn't hurt at all. Ping didn't say much. After stuffing the stone into Xueqi's hands, she hurriedly went to receive the other stones that Chen Jia threw up. Thank you. Xueqi put the stone into the animal skin bag and helped Ping look after the rattan basket. Tonight, it was not a peaceful night. Danger was lurking. Not only Xueqi, but the people of the drumming tribe were also prepared. Every year at this time, many things would happen. They were already used to it and were ready to fight at any time. That was why they let their children fish for stones, while the adults at home were always vigilant of their surroundings. Once they found anything unusual, they would join in the battle. Not far from the Water Moon Canal, Fu Shi and his companions were vigilantly watching their surroundings. However, they also wanted to know the situation at the Water Moon Canal. They didn't know how their own family situation was this year. I feel that my family will definitely have a lot this year, Fu Shi said. My family definitely won't have less than yours. The people beside Fu Shi were not convinced. I don't expect it to be the most, as long as it's not too little. Another person whispered. Useless. Sigh, even if I wanted to, I couldn't decide. So I don't have much hope. As they were talking, the people who came to investigate the situation at the Water Moon Canal came over. Fu Shi, your family is rich this year. That part of your house is the brightest. The man said while panting. Ah! Fu Shi was so excited that he couldn't wait to jump a few rounds. This is great. When the time comes to trade, I'll get more good things. I'll get a few beautiful clothes for Ping, and a few better stone tools for Chen Jia. These people were like Fu Shi. Although their family didn't have as much as Fu Shi's family this year, it was still quite a lot. When the time comes to trade, what should they get? Just as they were thinking, Fu Shi's face froze. The muscles under his skin suddenly swelled, causing his already sturdy body to become even thicker. Black totem patterns covered his entire body like sturdy scales. His legs instantly exploded with a powerful force, and he disappeared from the spot. In one step, he caught up with the person who wanted to rush over. Fu Shi's swollen arms were instantly raised high. His arms were covered with totem patterns, and every muscle was filled with power. His skin became even tighter under the expansion of his muscles. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist, and he quickly smashed towards the person. Like a cannonball, his fist smashed onto the person's body. Bang! The person who was about to rush out was smashed to the ground with all his strength. Just as the first fist landed, the second fist followed. Ka! Fu Shi's fist directly smashed the other person's head. The person lying on the ground had different totem patterns from the drumming tribe. Because of the death of the main body, they quickly disappeared. The sound of Fu Shi's breathing was not the usual sound of wheezing, but a series of rough grunts. His pupils were like the tip of a sword, and some dense black patterns extended from there to the surroundings. His eyes flashed coldly. After killing one person, Fu Shi did not stop. The muscles in his legs suddenly swelled, and his originally low body suddenly fell to the ground. His palms and legs vigorously slammed the ground, and his body quickly pushed out, rushing towards another person. The wet muddy water under his feet splashed everywhere. Competing with a crocodile in long-distance running was possible, but competing with it in an instant was difficult. The advantage of a crocodile was not speed, but reaction and explosive power. You might be able to outrun them, but the problem was whether they gave you a chance to run at the start of the race. Perhaps, before you could run, they had already bitten you. The people of the drumming tribe had many characteristics similar to crocodiles. They were strong, and their speed was not fast. But in an instant, their opponents would always be overwhelmed. Another person was clamped down by Fu Shi, and in the next moment, he was twisted in the middle. Just now the 2 people who passed by were too fast, and did not give Fu Shi enough time to send a message to the others. Now, after dealing with 2 opponents in succession, Fu Shi took advantage of this gap and roared from his throat like an ancient beast. The roar passed through the wet area, through the forest, like a war knife, splitting the silence of the night. The moon in the sky shone brightly, but under the moonlight, the battle had already begun. Chapter 160. Fu Shi's roar made everyone understand that tonight's slaughter had already begun. The people guarding the outer perimeter had already started fighting with the invaders. Roars, collisions, and screams filled the air. At the same time, the people on the shore of the Water-Moon Canal also increased their speed. Since the battle on the outer perimeter had begun, the warriors there would naturally be strict defenses. However, no one knew if the defensive line would be broken through. Moreover, this time, the invaders were from the drumming tribe. These people were simply rushing to die. Completely crazy. Take advantage of the fact that they haven't arrived yet. Hurry up and get the water-moon stones. Saying this, Ping felt that Chen Jia alone was too slow. She looked at the bottom of the river where her family was, and then at the other families. The other families had already sent people to help, but her family only had Chen Jia alone. This year, their family had more water-moon stones than the others. If this continued, they would definitely take longer to fish. This was not good. Once time passed, the water-moon stones would become darker and darker, until they became ordinary stones. So they had to speed up. Looking at Xueqi beside her, Ping said, "Xueqi, I'll go down with Chen Jia to fish for the water-moon stones. When the time comes, we'll throw them up. You stay here and catch them." "Okay, no problem." Ping jumped into the water and quickly swam to the bottom of the river, digging for the water-moon stones with Chen Jia. Some of the water-moon stones on the surface of the river had already been thrown ashore by Chen Jia, leaving behind some that were partially buried in the mud. Xueqi placed the stones thrown by Ping and Chen Jia into the rattan basket. Because of the water-moon stones inside, the rattan basket emitted a bright white light. However, because the rattan basket was surrounded by a layer of animal skin, the light only shone from the top of the rattan basket, not from the bottom of the basket. Catching the water-moon stones thrown ashore and placing them into the rattan basket, Xueqi also paid attention to the sounds of fighting in the distance. There seemed to be quite a few people coming. However, because of the robbing and theft of the water-moon stones every year, the drumming tribe was well prepared. There shouldn't be any big problems. As the water-moon stones were fished out one by one, the light in the water-moon canal became darker and darker. About half an hour later, there was basically no light left in the canal. On the shore, there were rattan baskets emitting light. But now, no one was happy because of the water-moon stones that they had fished out. Instead, they were very worried. "Looks like we won't be able to defend against it," an older man said. "Someone will always come. Fortunately, we've already fished out the water-moon stones. Otherwise, they would have taken advantage of us again," a woman said fiercely. Similar things had happened in the past. The guards at the outer layer might not be able to stop all the intruders, and some of the people who rushed into the tribe would steal the water-moon stones that had not been fished out from the water-moon channel. The totem patterns on the body of the elder who had spoken earlier appeared. He jumped into the water and swam to the other side of the channel. He lowered his body slightly. He waited for a moment. Then he took a step forward. His legs instantly exploded with power, leaving deep footprints on the ground. His body suddenly soared into the sky, and rushed out like lightning. The wide animal skin clothes on his body fluttered because of the change in the airflow. A figure quickly came out from the forest. Before he could react, he was hit by a punch, and the bones in his chest cracked. The person who hadn't died was still struggling. But in the next moment, a large hand with sharp claws pressed down on his heart. Puchi! The hand directly penetrated and crushed the intruder's heart. From the moment the elder moved to the moment he killed the intruder, everything happened in a very short time. Although it looked like a simple fight, it was in fact not so. Xueqi realized that after killing the intruder, the elder was panting heavily. If they couldn't kill the intruder in an instant, the longer the battle dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for them. Other than the moment they started to charge, their speed was slower than the intruder's. If the intruder successfully stole the water-moon stone and escaped, the people here might not be able to catch up to him. Someone came so quickly? Ping looked worried. In the past few years, there were people who could rush here at this time. But this year, the tribe had made a lot of preparations. There were also many barriers set up outside. Originally, They thought that they could delay for a little longer to give the water-moon channel more time to prepare and settle down. But now, it seemed that things were worse than they thought. Quickly let the children take the water-moon stones back, the elder said. Actually, even if he didn't say it, the others could also guess the current situation. Putting the last water-moon stone into the rattan basket, Ping wrapped the animal skin around the basket and tied it with a straw rope. The originally dazzling white light was completely blocked. Passing the rattan basket to Chen Jia, Ping said, "Quickly take the water-moon stones back." Chen Jia didn't say anything more. This kind of thing he had encountered many times since he was young. Mother. Carrying the rattan basket and walking a few steps, Chen Jia looked back at Ping and shouted, "Go back. Be smart. You must hide well." Ping exhorted. The surrounding families were in the same situation. They let the children take the water-moon stones back, while the adults stood guard here. Ping and the surrounding families were the same. The adults, no matter male or female, would all stand guard here. With the water-moon channel as the boundary, this was the second line of defense. After this, it would be the tribe's residence. "I'll stay here to help you," Xian said. "No, Xian, you take Chen Jia and the others back. You must be careful to hide well. There will definitely be many people from the drumming tribe coming this time. They won't let go of any opportunity. If someone rushes into the tribe, whether it's the water-moon stones or the children, it will be hard to escape. Even if the water-moon stones are stolen, don't fight with them. There will be people in the tribe to help. As long as you hide well and wait for the rest of the tribe, it will be fine." With Xian here, she felt more at ease. Chen Jia, this brat, was disobedient and liked to run around. If there was no one watching over him, she would feel uneasy. When this matter was over, she would give more water-moon stones to Xian as thanks. After these few days, Ping felt that Xian should be a reliable person. Xian thought for a while and nodded. "Okay, I'll go back with Chen Jia." The surrounding people and Ping lived very close to each other, so the children of several families went back together. Xian went with them. Carrying a large basket of water-moon stones, the group of children's feet were not slow. They were probably used to this kind of thing and did not panic. After returning to their homes, they all went back to their own homes. The place where the water-moon stones were hidden was actually in the water. In the room where Fu Shi and Ping slept, Chen Jia lifted up a few wooden planks and carefully placed the rattan basket down. Directly below was the pool. The water here was able to submerge the rattan basket. The murky water was able to hide the rattan basket very well. After placing the rattan basket down, Chen Jia then remembered that there was an outsider here. He carefully raised his head to take a look, only to find that Xian was not paying attention to him at all. Instead, he was busy at the window. "What are you doing?" Chen Jia asked. "Just in case, adding a layer of protection," Xian replied. When Chen Jia came over, Xian had already finished dealing with the matter. The windows of the drumming tribe were relatively large. Every bedroom had a large window. Most of the time, they would use the window as a door, directly entering and exiting through the window. Therefore, after closing the door, the window was the only way in and out. Chen Jia looked at the window and did not find anything special. Just as he was about to reach out and touch the window frame, he was stopped by Xian. "Your mother told you to hide well," Xian said. Chen Jia bit his hand in annoyance. "No need to hide, I didn't hide before. I'll just wait here." He originally wanted to lean against the window and take a look outside, but when he thought of Xian's actions just now, he held back and sat there, continuing to bite his hand. He heard that this time it would be even more dangerous. He did not know if anything would happen to his father and mother. In the past, his grandparents had lost their lives in this kind of attack. Xian glanced at Chen Jia. "If you want to hide, will you also hide in the pool?" "Yes. There's a hole in the pool where you can hide." There was no air in the hole under the pool. Only the drumming tribe, who were good at swimming, could hold their breath for a long time. Others could not do what they did. Outside, there were small crocodiles calling out. They were from the other pools. Probably because they felt uneasy, they kept calling out. This included the brown-eyed crocodile in Chen Jia's family pool. Xian looked outside and did not see any intruders. There was not even a person walking around. Everyone stayed in their own houses with their doors tightly shut. No one went out. You wait here. I'll go out and take a look, Xueqi said. After taking 2 steps, he turned around and said, Don't touch the window. If you want to hide, you can enter the pool from under the wooden planks. Remember, if anyone comes to call you, don't come out of the window. Stand as far away from the window as possible. I know, Chen Jia replied. Xueqi jumped out of the window without touching the frame at all. Compared to the fighting outside the tribe, the residential area was much quieter. Of course, that was on the premise that there were no crocodiles calling out. But because of the crocodiles calling out in the pool, it made people feel more nervous and full of danger. The mute crocodile had already climbed out of the pool and was with the other crocodiles in the pool. Sensing Xueqi's arrival, it broke away from its small group and headed towards Xueqi. On the other side, Chen Jia, who was staying in the house, was worried about his parents' situation. Suddenly, he heard someone calling his name from outside. Chen Jia, are you home? The voice was very familiar. It sounded like someone from the tribe. At the same time, there was the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs. The wooden planks creaked as they approached step by step. Who is it? Chen Jia wanted to jump out of the window to take a look, but he remembered Xueqi's instructions before he left. He stopped and stood 2 steps away from the window, looking out. A figure heard Chen Jia's voice and walked to the window, looking into the room. It was dressed like a tribesman. His face looked familiar. It was one of the tribe's patrolling warriors. But Chen Jia had a strange feeling. Chapter 161. What's the matter? Chen Jia did not immediately walk over, but stood still and asked. The chief asked me to bring you all over. This time, the drumming tribe has sent many people, so it's not safe for you all to stay here. The other party said. Seeing that Chen Jia was still doubtful, the man took out a square bone plate with the drumming tribe's totem pattern on it. Here, it was equivalent to the chief's command and was a proof. Seeing the bone plate, Chen Jia's heart relaxed slightly. Then what about my family's water moonstones? Chen Jia asked again. Bring them along. If we leave them here, they will find us. The man said. Okay. Chen Jia did not think that the chief would be greedy for his family's water moonstones. If he could bring the water moonstones to the central area, it would be much safer. Suppressing the strange feeling in his heart, Chen Jia removed the wooden plank and pulled out the rattan basket filled with water moonstones from the water. Carrying it, he walked towards the window. As he walked, he asked, Has Tail and the others all gone over? Tail was a nearby child about the same age as Chen Jia. They often played together. Because his hair was tied up in a bundle and was somewhat stiff, looking like a crocodile's tail, everyone gave him such a name. Yes, they're waiting at the edge of the forest. You'll see them soon. As the man spoke, he looked around. There were people in the other houses looking in this direction. He waved his hand. You all come out too, let's leave together. Okay. The people on the other side replied. Hearing that many people he knew were here, Chen Jia's heart was happy. Hugging the rattan basket, he planned to climb out of the window. But in the next moment, he remembered Xueqi's warning. Xueqi said, Don't leave the window if anyone comes over. Then should he leave or not? Thus, when he was half a step away from the window, Chen Jia stopped and looked at the person standing outside. Because of the moonlight, half of the person's face was covered in shadows. His eyes were brown and yellow, the eyes of the drumming tribe. But it was strange. Why did this person's face become more and more blurred? His face was blurred? Chen Jia was startled. Looking at the person outside the window, his face showed vigilance. What's wrong? Come out quickly. Everyone is waiting. The man urged. Not only did Chen Jia not move forward, he quickly retreated a few steps, still vigilantly staring at the person in front of the window. He was suspicious of the person in front of him, but when he thought about the domino he had taken out, it was indeed given to him by the leader. Should he give it out or not? Seeing that Chen Jia did not move, the person waiting outside the window scolded him, but Chen Jia still did not move forward. His face was still filled with hesitation as he held onto the rattan basket tightly, as if he was guarding against a thief. After a few words of reprimand to no avail, the man lost his patience. Murderous intent flashed in his eyes as he raised his foot, intending to enter. The moment the other party looked at him, Chen Jia felt as if he had returned to the day when he was pushed into the river. It's him. It was the person in front of him. Chen Jia's heart was as cold as ice. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't. Just as he was about to shout and expose this person, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. The other party leaped up and stepped on the windowsill. With just a light jump, he would be able to enter the house. However, the moment he stepped on the windowsill, a rapid buzzing sound rang out. The person who was about to jump through the window paused. His feet and some parts of his body were tied up by thin threads. It was these threads that caused his movements to stop for a moment. What's going on? Why is there such a thing at the window? Before he had time to wonder, a stone knife pierced his abdomen from behind. Puh! Under the moonlight, dark blood dripped from the knife. You, he turned his head, only to find that the person he thought had left was actually standing behind him without a sound. Previously, when he quietly came over, he saw Chen Jia and Xueqi who entered the house together with Chen Jia. However, he did not know Xueqi's strength, so he hesitated whether or not he should act according to plan. Xueqi's departure was exactly what he wanted. Once he saw Xueqi leave, he came over. He originally thought that Chen Jia, this idiot, would be tricked out quickly, but who would have thought that such a thing would happen? Xueqi threw the incapacitated person to the side and looked at the dumbstruck Chen Jia in the room. Are you all right? I'm fine, I can now. Chen Jia looked at the window, his mind still replaying the moment just now. In the blink of an eye, that person was tied up. No wonder Xueqi did not allow him to touch the window. You can now, Xueqi said. Chen Jia put down the rattan basket, climbed out of the window, and looked at the person who was thrown to the side. Tied up by thin threads and stabbed with a knife, although he was not dead, he was no longer a threat. You knew that someone would come? Chen Jia asked Xueqi. I guessed. At this time, the people who were excitedly packing up saw the situation in front of them, and were all frightened. What happened? Chen Jia, you killed your own people. He just said that he would bring us to the chief, Chen Jia. Didn't you hear him? Someone said with dissatisfaction. He's a traitor. He betrayed the drumming tribe. Chen Jia said loudly. He's not. A voice came from not far away. Xueqi had already sensed that someone was approaching, but after discovering the identity of the other party, he did not make a sound. Qingyi? Chen Jia looked at the person walking over. Qingyi was the youth who was with Xueqi that day when he was mistakenly thought to have killed the crocodile. He was the chief's son and had a high position in the drumming tribe. Xueqi also found that many people in the drumming tribe were very afraid of Qingyi. You said he's not a traitor, and did not betray the drumming tribe? How is that possible? I was pushed into the river by him that day. It must be him. Although the voice was different, Chen Jia felt that the person who pushed him that day was this person. Chen Jia, you're mistaken again, right? Yes, Chen Jia, you must be mistaken. Just now he said that he would bring us to the chief. A few people around Chen Jia's age said. Xueqi did not make a sound, waiting for Qingyi's next words. He did not kill the person just now, keeping him alive so that it would be easier to interrogate him. However, Xueqi did not doubt his identity. The crocodile in the pond had already opened its mouth towards the person, as if it wanted to bite him. I said he did not betray the drumming tribe, because he is not a member of the drumming tribe. How can he betray us? As he spoke, Qingyi reached out and grabbed the neck of the person on the ground, gently twisting it. Ka! The person who was kept alive by Xueqi really stopped breathing. After he stopped breathing, the person's body also changed. His body shrunk a little, and his face was no longer the same as before. Xueqi moved his hand, and the silk thread that was originally tightly tied to the person slid down as if it had a life of its own. Seeing that everyone was looking at the silk thread in his hand, Xueqi said, Our tribe uses it to set up traps to catch prey. The few of them had an I understand expression on their faces, but they were thinking about other things in their hearts. They had heard from their elders that in many tribes, the warriors were not strong, so in order to not starve, they would use other methods to hunt, such as traps. Therefore, including Chen Jia, the children all thought that in Xueqi's tribe, the warriors must be very weak. Retrieving the silk thread, Xueqi looked at Qingyi and asked, Who is this person? I don't know. Knowing that there was a spy, the tribe had indeed made arrangements. However, this place was not in the core area of the tribe, so the people arranged by the tribe had not yet arrived. Qingyi had chased after a spy here, but he did not expect to encounter such a scene. The chief indeed told the children here to bring the water moonstones over, but the person in charge of notifying this area was me, not him. Xueqi pointed at the dead person and said, "There were already people from the drumming tribe who had entered. They were the best at hiding. They passed through the chaotic battlefield outside and infiltrated into the tribe. They were very skilled at hiding, quietly lurking, and killing at any time. Even the patrolling warriors in the tribe could not detect them all, so there were always areas where they were overlooked. As for the people who attacked the drumming tribe at the beginning, they were only there to attract attention. The tribe had already arranged for people to wait in various places, so that they could clean up these hidden people one by one. However, seeing that the situation was not right, the chief sent some people to inform the residents near the border to move inwards. After this incident, they would return. After all, most of the people hiding in their homes were children, so they did not have much fighting power and still needed protection. Knowing that they really had to go to the chief's place, the few people who were disappointed earlier became excited again. The neighbors informed each other, and those who were still at home quickly packed up their things and gathered. There's one more thing I want to say. Even if you follow me to the chief's place, there may be hidden people on the way. When the time comes and we kill them, I may not be able to take care of all of you." Xueqi said to the people who gathered around. They were surrounded by children. The youngest was less than 10 years old, while the oldest was about the same age as Chen Jia. There was even a child who was hugging his newborn sister. With such a group, if they were to encounter someone in hiding, they would definitely be affected. After all, those people in hiding would not show mercy just because they were children. Hearing this, everyone's heart sank, but they were not too surprised. They were mentally prepared. Since young, they had encountered many things. "Actually, we can send the youngest one over first," Xian said. "How do we send them?" Everyone looked at Xian. Xian pointed to the sky. Cha! A whistle sounded. Very quickly, a figure appeared in the sky. When it flew over, Cha was still holding onto a person from the drumming tribe. Its claws had already pierced through the person, and he was already dead. After leaving the dead intruder behind, Cha landed on the ground. Xian let the youngest children get on the eagle's back first, including those who were carrying other children. The first batch of 7 children were all under 10 years old. Xian let Cha bring them over. Cha knew the way, so there was no need to worry. Moreover, the intruders did not attack from the air, so the air was safer than the land. There were still 5 children left behind. Xian wanted to let Chen Jia go up, but this child refused and said to wait for the next batch. "Then be careful later, don't stay too far away from me," Xian said. "Okay." Chen Jia hugged the rattan basket and walked to Xian's side. The other 4, without exception, all gathered around Xueqi. In their eyes, Xueqi was much stronger than Xian, so it was better to follow him. Chapter 162. From Chen Jia's house to the central region, it wasn't too far, but it wasn't too close either. The drumming tribe's territory was very large, and because of the many ponds, the people living there weren't as close together as the Yanjiao tribe. Right now, most of the tribe's warriors had already gone to various places to defend against the invaders. Naturally, there were only a few people left in the inner region, and those who were patrolling and investigating internal dangers might not be able to take care of every place. Xian walked beside a pond. Because of the moon, it wasn't dark at night, so he could see his surroundings clearly. However, under these circumstances, there were still hidden dangers that weren't easy to discover. Xueqi led the way, his pace neither fast nor slow. He didn't stop because of the hidden dangers in the surroundings, nor did he rush. Beside the pond, there was a pool of blood. Pushing aside the water plants, he could see a person lying there, no longer breathing. Looking at his clothes, he was from the drumming tribe. When Chen Jia and the others saw him, their faces were filled with sorrow, but they didn't say anything. Every year, similar situations would happen, but it wasn't every year that they would suffer heavy losses. Xian looked around. With his many years of hunting experience, he could feel that someone was watching them, but he didn't know where the other party was hiding. As long as the other party made the slightest movement, Xian would be able to tell. Not only Xian, but if it were any of the Yanjiao tribe's warriors who were out hunting, most of them would be able to sense it. Since he couldn't pinpoint their location, he had to use another method. Xueqi activated his special ability, and under his vision, he could clearly see the surrounding trees. There were a few skeletons that were clearly different from the surrounding trees, but some of them were blocked by the trees, so he couldn't see them clearly, or he could only see part of the body. However, this was enough. About 30 meters away from them, there was someone hiding there. The other party hid very well, almost as if he had stopped breathing. It was as if he had blended in with the surrounding trees, making him difficult to discover. Just like what Xueqi had said, those who could sneak in without anyone noticing must have very good concealment skills. They were like hunters who were waiting for their prey to come to them at the mouth of a trap. In order to achieve their goal, they could even stand in the same place for an entire day and night, maintaining this state of concealment without eating, drinking, sleeping, or moving. Once they found an opportunity, they would launch a surprise attack in one go, and they would even not hesitate to use suicidal methods to drag their target to death. The drumming tribe's way of doing things made many other tribes wary. Once the drumming tribe was involved, they would enter a state of high alert. Every time they encountered the drumming tribe, there would be a fierce battle. Walking from Chen Jia's house to here, Xueqi had already seen several corpses. They had been killed without a sound. In the surrounding muddy area or in the grass by the pool, there were some small crocodiles crying. They were very uneasy and anxious for their parents to come back. However, those big guys had to wait for at least one more day, until the day the river rose. Everyone be careful. Xueqi did not directly point out where the people were hiding. He could see that Xueqi, who was walking at the front, had already noticed. After all, this was their territory. If he directly pointed out where the people were hiding in the dark, it might actually force them out. Cha-Cha had not returned yet, and there were still 5 children here. It was not easy to deal with them. As they got closer and closer to the people hiding behind the tree, Xueqi raised his hand and signaled the 4 people behind him to retreat. At the same time, Xueqi also pulled Chen Jia, who was beside him, in another direction. Xueqi had just taken a step forward when a figure suddenly rushed out from behind the tree. His eyes were fierce and cold. It was not the emotionless coldness of the drumming tribe, but a kind of coldness that was filled with bloodlust. This was a very dangerous tribe. Xueqi had already blacklisted the drumming tribe. When the time came, if the Yanjiao tribe could smoothly come over and return to their homeland, they had to be on guard against the drumming tribe. The person who suddenly rushed out had fine scale-like patterns all over his body. He emitted a dangerous aura, instantly causing Chen Jia and the others' hair to stand on end. The moment the other party rushed out, Xueqi discovered that Xueqi's arms suddenly expanded, emitting a caw-caw sound. Other than his arms, the other parts of his body also seemed to be inflated, suddenly expanding. Originally, he looked thinner than the other people of the drumming tribe, but after this short change, even his loose beast skin clothes became tight. His mouth opened, revealing 4 slightly long fangs, 2 on top and 2 on top. A low rumbling sound came from his throat. When he looked at the person hiding in the dark, his eyes were like 2 bright spots. Perhaps it was because of the moonlight, but these 2 spots were slightly brighter. When the intruder came closer and closer, Xueqi also moved. His legs stepped on the ground, meeting the intruder at high speed. The muscles on his entire arm bulged, faintly pulsating. Every muscle contained an enormous explosive force, allowing him to make the fastest attack in the shortest amount of time. Here there were no fancy techniques. The battle was more direct and simple, and there were no deceptive moves. There were only direct and decisive attacks, as well as the determination to kill the opponent. The intruder was holding a bone knife made of animal bones, but when he swung the knife down, he discovered that the knife was caught by a hand. After Xueqi held the bone knife with one hand, his other arm smashed down like a stone pillar. At such a close distance, and with such strength if he was hit, he would be severely injured or even die. The intruder wanted to dodge, but he discovered that the hand holding the knife had unknowingly clamped down on his arm, like a fierce beast biting down on its prey. Unless he broke his arm, he would not be able to escape. The intruder had the courage to break his arm, but unfortunately, he did not have the time to do so. Ha! The crisp sound of bones breaking could be heard in the air. The intruder's eyes were still filled with disbelief, but very quickly, the light dimmed. His body twitched, and then he was no longer breathing. Xueqi threw the man with the broken skull to the side like he was throwing trash. His legs suddenly exerted force, and he rushed in a direction. There was a small bush there, and it did not look like a good place to hide. Xueqi was like a racing car that suddenly accelerated, whizzing past. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of the bush. After a few bangs, the sound of bodies colliding was heard, and the sound of flesh being forcefully penetrated was heard. Immediately after, Xueqi saw the figure that was originally hiding behind the bush being torn in half. It was a very violent and bloody way, very much like the style of the Ji tribe. If you looked at Xueqi's eyes now, you would discover that his eyes were not dark brown, but the same as those people with yellow-brown eyes who had a violent temper. Xueqi was the only person in the tribe who had two colors of eyes. Normally, his eyes were black and looked harmless, but once he was in a fight, they would become violent. Xueqi's actions probably made the people lurking around realize that they had been discovered. They rushed out of their hiding places, and felt that Xueqi was not easy to deal with, so they set their sights on Xueqi. As long as they got rid of the older ones, it would be fine. The children were easy to deal with, and they could do it at any time. The other party used their speed advantage, and when they rushed out, they even changed their positions to avoid the Ji tribe's sudden burst of speed. As long as they avoided the first move, their chances of success would be higher. However, Xueqi was not from the Ji tribe, and Xueqi was not slower than the other party. Xueqi pulled out his white teeth knife. Ever since he left the tribe, this knife had not undergone the cleansing ceremony. The originally white blade had many red marks on it, left behind by Xueqi when he was crossing the river on the canoe. No matter how careful he was, he could not avoid fighting. And a normal brush would not be able to clean the knife completely. A knife that had not undergone the cleansing ceremony, but had gone through many killings, always carried a terrifying aura. The biting cold knife energy made Chen Jia, who was closest to Xueqi, feel a chill on his forehead and back, and couldn't help but shiver. Xueqi took a deep breath, his body crouching. Facing the people rushing over, he did not dodge, but instead met them head-on. The shoulder holding the teeth knife shook, and as if an accelerator was installed in his arm, the knife became a blur as it chopped towards the people in front of him. Compared to the people of the Ji tribe, Xueqi did not have their inflatable transformation, but the momentum of the knife was stronger, and the power was more ferocious. The knife drew a blurry arc, and with a light poochie sound, the first intruder who rushed towards Xueqi had his neck slit. Because the strength of the attack was too strong, the other party's head was almost chopped off. After killing one person, Xueqi did not stop. Like a leopard on the hunt, he dodged the other person's attack. As he passed by, he used the handle of his knife to hit the other person's arm. Pang! The other party's knife did not touch Xueqi, and instead heavily chopped into the muddy pool at Xueqi's feet. The powerful knife chopped into the muddy pool, like a small bomb exploding in the muddy pool. The muddy water splashed everywhere, like an earth-colored firework, exploding with a bang. For a moment, Chen Jia could not see the situation behind the splashing muddy water. But when the muddy water fell again, the battle behind had already ended. The person standing beside the muddy pool was still holding a black bone knife in his hand, maintaining his chopping posture. The scale-like totemic patterns on his face gradually disappeared, and his eyes stared straight at his chest. There was a bloody hole. Blood continuously flowed out, dyeing the muddy water red. This was the first time Xueqi had killed someone, but he was surprisingly calm. He did not know if it was because this body had affected his thinking, or if he was used to the cruel rules of this world, or if he was born cold-blooded. Swinging his arm to shake off the blood on his knife, Xueqi scanned his surroundings. There were still people coming this way, coming from the outside. He did not know if they were trying to force their way in, or if they were trying to sneak in. No matter what, this was not a place to stay for long. He had to hurry and send the children to the chief. A shadow flashed across the sky. Xueqi was delighted. If he could send the 5 children over now, things would be much easier. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.